Chapter 654. Poplar Fruit stood between the two of them and pulled Song Jiwen to the front. He smiled and said, "All right, don't quarrel. I'll say something fair. I'll criticize you first." Song Jiwen. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but use his teacher's tone. "I asked you to help Enlan find a place in Yangcheng that can be rented as a Tai Chi dojo. How can you delay for so long and refuse to help? Uncle Mosquito, can you turn on the TV for me? I want to watch TV." Kiki poked her head out, but she was short and no one could see her, so she could only call out coquettishly. Because Kiki had been secretly watching TV before, Poplar Fruit asked Song Jiwen to change the power socket to a higher position. Usually, it was disconnected so that the little girl wouldn't touch it. After Poplar Fruit gave permission, Song Jiwen returned to the room and helped Kiki turn on the TV. They didn't have to worry about changing the channel. Kiki was already sitting on the sofa with a large remote control and waiting. When they returned outside, Poplar Fruit continued, "Enlan is a young girl who hasn't graduated yet. She has no relatives in Yangcheng and only knows the two of us. Tell me, if we don't help her, who else can? I did help. How can a place like that be so easy to find?" Song Jiwen muttered. Poplar Fruit didn't care what he muttered. He continued to scold. "Besides, is what Enlan said wrong about you? I've actually wanted to say something about you for a long time, you know? You play games every day and sleep in during the holidays. You changed your clothes but you didn't wash them yourself and made me wash them." Chen Anlin added. "Yes, you changed your clothes but didn't wash them yourself and made Enlan wash them. This is called sloppy," Poplar Fruit said casually. However, he thought about it and realized that something was wrong. Poplar Fruit widened his eyes and looked at Chen Anlin and Song Jiwen. With their relationship, shouldn't Chen Anlin be suppressing Song Jiwen? "What?" Song Jiwen complained. "Is this my fault? Old Gua, you know that I put my clothes in the washing machine for a few days before I washed them." In the end, he was still lazy. However, Song Jiwen spoke righteously as if he was the one in the right. Song Jiwen turned his head and asked Chen Anlin, "I didn't ask you to wash them, right? I changed them and put them on my balcony. You came over and took them away to wash. How can you blame me for this?" Chen Anlin's face was a little red. She was far inferior to Song Jiwen in terms of language. She couldn't win against him. She raised her eyebrows and raised her hand to throw a tantrum. "Anyway, you didn't wash your clothes in time. It's not hygienic. Look, old Gua, where did you find this violent girl? She wants to hit people just because of a disagreement." Song Jiwen hid behind Poplar Fruit. With Poplar Fruit around, Chen Anlin wouldn't really hit him. He could finally speak up. "Tell me, who's right and who's wrong? Enlan isn't wrong." Poplar Fruit obviously had to take the girl's face into consideration. He smiled and said, "Mosquito, you're not someone who lacks money. Why do you always save a few days' worth of clothes to wash? The girl was kind enough to help you wash your clothes. You should be grateful." "He doesn't know how to be grateful," Chen Anlin complained. "After the clothes were washed, I helped him dry them. Don't you think that's infuriating?" Song Jiwen knew that he was in the wrong here, so he didn't continue to argue. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Enlan, Mosquito knows that he's wrong. Let's not pursue this topic anymore, okay? Mosquito, as a man in the future, you have to be more generous and give in to Enlan. I don't understand. You're always obedient to other girls. Why do you quarrel with Enlan every day?" "That's because I don't have any ulterior motives towards her." Song Jiwen smiled and said, "Besides, I've never seen her as a woman. I don't think you're a man either." Chen Anlin raised her eyebrows and retorted. Poplar Fruit had a headache. He said, "Well, even if that's the case, you still have to respect each other a little. Mosquito, you heard what I said just now. And Enlan, I'll also say a few words to you. We martial artists don't practice kung fu to beat people. If Mosquito does something wrong, you can tell him directly. If he doesn't listen, you can tell me. You know your kung fu. If you hit him, he'll feel a lot of pain. Who told him to deliberately make me angry? Chen Anlin pouted and stared at her feet. Hey, it's okay. Song Jiwen waved his hand generously and said, anyway, Lao Gua is back. Let's find a house for you to move out of. Out of sight, out of mind. I won't provoke you. Chen Anlin opened her mouth and her eyes turned red. However, with her personality, this was all she could do. Although Chen Anlin felt a little wronged, she still straightened her neck and said, let's move out. Who wants to see you every day? Song Jiwen immediately regretted his harsh words. However, his regret was not because of himself, but because he suddenly remembered that this little pepper was chasing after poplar fruit. Was it a little unfair to his brother to ask her to move out? Poplar fruit laughed and said, what? Enlon won't move out. Mosquito, don't talk nonsense. You're always bullying girls. Yes, I'm wrong. Song Jiwen saw poplar fruit trying to smooth things over and thought that poplar fruit wanted to keep Chen Anlin. He quickly bowed his head and admitted his mistake. He smiled and gave poplar fruit a, look. Poplar fruit had been good friends with him for more than 5 years. How could he not know what he was up to? He didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, Mosquito, don't get the wrong idea. I let Enlon stay here not because I have any feelings for her. Enlon, don't think too much. Poplar fruit nodded at Chen Anlin embarrassedly and said, what I mean is, you should stay here. I'm moving to a place near the school. I have an apartment there. What? Lao Gua, you're not staying here. Song Jiwen was shocked when he heard this. He knew that poplar fruit had an apartment near the school. It was convenient for him to go back to school for classes. However, it was far less comfortable than the high-end apartment in Jinli district. Why did he want to move out? Besides, why did he want to stay and leave him with this hot-tempered girl? Lao Gua, you can't abandon me. Song Jiwen shouted. Yeah, how can I do that? How can I do that? Chen Anlin shook his head and said, I'd better rent my own place. I'll just choose a place near the dojo. Poplar fruit smiled and said, it's okay. I still have 1 year left on the lease. Anyway, I've already paid the rent. If you don't stay, you'll just leave it empty. You don't have to talk to me about money. Poplar fruit waved his hand and said, I don't lack money. On the contrary, you've just started a business. You should keep your money. Opening a dojo costs a lot. No, Lao Gua, why don't you stay? What's so good about the school? Song Jiwen couldn't help but ask. Chapter 655. Song Jiwen questioned angrily. It was rare for him to ask about Chen Anlin's heart. She also felt strange. It didn't make sense to give her house to someone else for no reason. Chen Anlin nodded and looked at poplar fruit, waiting for his answer. Poplar fruit smiled and said, the house in the school is not as comfortable as our apartment. But, poplar fruit paused and kept them in suspense, I have good news to tell you first. What good news? Song Jiwen asked impatiently, don't speak so fast. I'm in love. Poplar fruit smiled brightly. Awkward silence. Song Jiwen was stunned, and Chen Anlin's baby face showed a confused expression. She didn't know what being in love had to do with moving to another place. What? You don't want to give any reaction? Poplar fruit smiled. Song Jiwen finally came back to his senses. He asked in surprise, you have a girlfriend? Who? That little junior sister. The one who failed to confess before. Song Jiwen said and secretly glanced at Chen Anlin. However, Chen Anlin's confused and somewhat happy expression made him feel a little strange. Shouldn't she be jealous? It's her. But what do you mean by a failed confession? That's just Bebe. She still wants to wait and think about it again, okay? Poplar Fruit smiled. Damn. When did this happen? She said it first. Song Jiwen asked happily and excitedly. At this time, he had already thrown the unhappiness of Poplar Fruit abandoning him and moving to another place to live to the back of his mind. He was full of happiness for his brother. In the past, he was troubled by love because of Xiaoyao. However, he wasn't immersed in his own world. He had always been worried about his brother's relationship. When Poplar Fruit did not accept Duan Xueqing, Song Jiwen nagged for a long time. I was the one who opened my mouth last night. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and smiled. I confessed on impulse. I thought I would be rejected again. I didn't expect her to agree. This is such a good thing. Brother Poplar Fruit is going to treat us. Chen Anlin interrupted with a smile. That's right. Song Jiwen glanced at Chen Anlin with appreciation and said, you should also call out your sister-in-law. Let's get to know each other. I can treat you, but I can't ask her to come out today. Poplar Fruit waved his hand and smiled. Bebe is busy with the competition. Next time, I'll bring her out to meet you guys. Competition? What kind of competition? Chen Anlin asked curiously. A mathematics competition. It's an international competition. His wife is also a top student. Song Jiwen had learned from Poplar Fruit before. He smiled at Chen Anlin and said, how about it? Poplar Fruit is now taken. Do you regret it? Regret what? Chen Anlin asked inexplicably. I'm envious. Really? I said, what's the use of being envious? You should take the initiative. If you wait for Poplar Fruit to come back, it will be too late. Song Jiwen sighed. Poplar Fruit was still a little confused, but Chen Anlin understood. She shouted angrily, what? What are you thinking? When I said envious, I was referring to Poplar Fruit and sister-in-law's studies, okay? Poplar Fruit can study for a master's degree, and sister-in-law is so amazing. Unlike me, I was a special student in university, and my grades were so bad. Also, Chen Anlin pointed at Song Jiwen and said seriously, don't think that everyone is as dirty as you. I only came to Yangcheng for two purposes. First, to learn martial arts from Poplar Fruit. Second, I want to use my own ideas to open a Tai Chi dojo and prove to my family that my ideas are right. After she said that, the atmosphere became a little cold. Poplar Fruit could only come up and ease the atmosphere. He smiled and said, okay, now that everything has been explained, let's not quarrel anymore. Enlan, you should stay here. Don't worry, Mosquito is a good person. Mosquito, you too, don't say things that provoke her. I believe that Enlan doesn't really want to hit you. If she was really a violent person, you would be lying in the hospital by now. Chen Anlin looked at Song Jiwen and didn't say anything. Sigh, okay, I apologize. Xiao. Enlan, what I said before was wrong, please don't take it to heart. Song Jiwen cupped his hands and went down the stairs that Poplar Fruit gave him. Song Jiwen was actually a magnanimous person. Otherwise, Poplar Fruit wouldn't have been good friends with him for so many years. However, when facing Chen Anlin, Song Jiwen himself did not know why he kept trying to provoke her as if he had taken the wrong medicine. Chen Anlin smiled. Her childlike face that didn't match her age showed a mature generosity. She said softly, it's okay, I won't take it to heart. Poplar Fruit continued, actually, Enlan, there's another reason why I asked you to stay here. To be honest, I really don't know much about site selection and management. On the other hand, Mosquito knows a lot of people and can help more than me. If you stay here, you can discuss anything with him. Mosquito, you're not deliberately avoiding it, are you? Okay, I don't need you to provoke me. Song Jiwen smiled and said, Enlan is also my friend, how can I not help? I really didn't have a good place before, but don't worry, I've already asked a few friends to help me ask. I believe there will be good news soon. Thank you, I'm sorry. I misunderstood before. Chen Anlin also bowed and said with some embarrassment. Chen Anlin was not tall, and her face was like a little girl's. Just now, she had bared her fangs and brandished her claws, wanting to beat someone up. At that time, she felt that there was no threat. Now that she bowed, it was as if the little maid had done something wrong. She looked especially pitiful. Song Jiwen blushed and waved his hand, saying, You don't have to apologize. I didn't make it clear to you. It was a happy ending. Poplar Fruit clapped his hands and said with a smile, Okay, let's get ready to eat. Let's go out to eat. It's my treat. However, Mosquito, come and help me move some things. Some clothes and Kiki's things need to be moved to the car. We'll bring them back tonight. Poplar Fruit actually had a lot of things to move. In addition to the clothes, he took Kiki's crib, the folding bed that he didn't use much before, and Kiki's many small toys, milk powder, and diapers. The books in his study room were still there for the time being. In fact, after reading them once, Poplar Fruit had completely memorized them. He only kept them for the purpose of collecting them. Now that there was no place to put them in the teacher's apartment, he would move them all over when he moved to a bigger house in the future. Then there was the computer. Poplar Fruit took the laptop that Song Jiwen had eliminated. Although it was bought 2 years ago, Song Jiwen used it to play games, and the configuration was very high. Even now, it was the mainstream configuration of netbooks. Poplar Fruit only used it for work, so it was definitely more than enough. Chapter 656. Fang Beibei was a little annoyed. She started to regret not thinking things through yesterday and forming a team with Senior Wang Di. This person really doesn't know when to stop. When the discussion started, Wang Di sat beside Fang Beibei excitedly. At this time, Fang Beibei didn't think much of it. It was a discussion, so they had to sit together to talk. Senior Shenhong sat on the other side of Fang Beibei. She looked at them with a complicated expression, but she didn't say anything. In fact, Fang Beibei didn't have a bad impression of this senior from the beginning. His results were among the top of the dozen people in Higashiyama University's preparation team. Moreover, he had also participated in an international competition. If she could form a team with him in the end, the chances of winning would be very high. Wang Di was considered a little handsome in a group of ugly science students. This made him very confident. It was said that he had had 2 girlfriends in his 3 years in university, but there were still many girls who flocked to him. Not to mention that Fang Beibei didn't consider him from the beginning. Even if she did, she would have excluded him after seeing him flirting with so many girls. No matter what, since they had become temporary teammates, they had to do their homework well this time. Fang Beibei wanted to perform well so that she could enter the seeded team when the professors split up. However, as the discussion progressed, Fang Beibei's brows furrowed. Wang Di pretended to be discussing and kept moving closer to Fang Beibei. He was almost sticking to Fang Beibei. He even used the excuse of pointing out the SPSS operator on the computer to deliberately reach out and touch the back of Fang Beibei's hand. The first 2 times, Fang Beibei thought it was an accident and she carefully avoided it. However, Wang Di was getting more and more daring. There was even one time when his hand almost covered Fang Beibei's hand. This obviously groping behavior made Fang Beibei feel disgusted. There were several times when she wanted to stand up and slap him, but there wasn't much time left for her homework. If she fell out with her teammates, she wouldn't be able to finish her homework this time. Therefore, Fang Beibei gritted her teeth and endured it for a while. Then, she made an excuse to go to the toilet. When she came back, she said to senior sister Shenhong, "Senior sister, why don't you go there? Let's switch positions." I'm not that familiar with SPSS yet. Shinhong had been watching the whole time, but Fang Bebe didn't say anything, and she didn't want to blame her classmate. Now that Fang Bebe made this request, Shinhong nodded with a smile. Wang Di kept winking at her, but Shinhong pretended not to see it. Shinhong sat over, and Wang Di behaved himself. Of course, Wang Di wouldn't touch Shinhong. Firstly, Wang Di wasn't interested in Shinhong. Secondly, Shinhong's temper was so fierce. If he dared to do that, Shinhong would definitely slap him on the spot. Finally, they could have a proper discussion. Fang Bebe happily gave herself a thumbs up in her heart. Fang Bebe was actually very good. In Higashiyama University, although she was a first-year student and the only first-year student to enter the preparation team for the competition, Fang Bebe's mathematical talent was very strong. In just a month of training, she was already at the level of a senior student. Of course, Fang Bebe also had a shortcoming. Her English was relatively poor. When she participated in the competition, she had to write a thesis. If no one in her team could write an English thesis well, then they wouldn't be able to get an award even if they completed it well. Now, Fang Bebe didn't need to think about this problem because the homework this time didn't involve a thesis. It was purely problem solving and modeling. The three of them really focused on the discussion. Their progress was very fast, especially Fang Bebe. She came up with a few constructive hypotheses and helped the senior brother and sister find an entry point for the problem. The next step was easy to deal with. With the hypotheses, they could start modeling. Fang Bebe thought that Wang Di would give up after being rejected. However, she didn't know that Wang Di wasn't as simple as poplar fruit. He was also considered an expert in playing with women. After failing once, not only was he not depressed, but he was also excitedly planning for a second time. During lunch, Fang Bebe pulled Shinhong with the excuse that she had other things to do. She didn't accept Wang Di's invitation and the two of them ran to another cafeteria. However, who knew that Wang Di wouldn't go away and came all the way here? He pretended not to know and walked over with a plate. He smiled and said, "Bebe, you're here too. Great, let's eat together." Wang Di didn't even look at the empty seat next to Shinhong. He walked to Fang Bebe's side and put down the plate first. Then, he prepared to pick up the bags that Fang Bebe and Shinhong put on the seat next to Fang Bebe. "Come and sit here." "Why are you touching our bags?" Shinhong pointed at the empty seat on her left and said unhappily. Wang Di was thick-skinned. He put Fang Bebe and Shinhong's bags on the seat further to the right and then sat down. He smiled and said, "Shinhong, we've been classmates for 3 years. Aren't you tired of sitting together every day? Also, our junior sister is so beautiful. Let me bask in her glory. Look, there are so many envious eyes around us. It's a murderous gaze, right?" Shinhong said sarcastically, "Be careful not to be slapped by Bebe's flower protection army when you go back tonight. I'll be a romantic ghost if I die under her skirt." "Ha! For Bebe, I'm very brave." Wang Di self-righteously said some witty words. He thought that such domineering words would be able to move a pure girl like Fang Bebe's heart. However, Fang Bebe just buried her head in the food and ignored him. As he said that, Wang Di took out his phone and took a selfie with Fang Bebe. "Bebe!" Wang Di suddenly shouted. Fang Bebe reflexively raised her head. Her mouth was stuffed and she asked blankly, "What?" Wang Di had already put away his phone with satisfaction. He was going to post it on Weibo after dinner. Fang Bebe frowned and asked him for his phone to delete the photo. However, Wang Di refused. Fang Bebe also didn't want to snatch it. This way, he wouldn't be able to take advantage of her. "I'm full." Without waiting for Wang Di to finish his first mouthful of food and continue talking nonsense, Fang Bebe suddenly stood up and looked at senior sister Shinhong. Shenhong looked at Fang Beibei's unfinished food and her own plate of sweet and sour tenderloin. She smiled bitterly, stood up, and said with a sigh, I'm full too. I don't know why, but I don't have any appetite at all today. Sigh. Senior brother, you eat slowly. I'll go for a walk with senior sister. Without giving Wang Di a chance to persuade her to stay, Fang Beibei took the plate and pulled Shenhong to the entrance of the canteen. Clang. Shenhong, who wanted to walk around to find another place to continue eating, saw that Fang Beibei had already poured the food in her hand. She smiled bitterly and shook her head. She also poured the food and walked out of the canteen with Fang Beibei. Chapter 657. Great Aunt, because of you, I didn't even eat 2 mouthfuls of rice. Out of the cafeteria, Shenhong pulled Fang Beibei's hand and rebuked. I'm sorry, senior sister. How about I treat you to something else? Fang Beibei said with an apologetic tone. Fang Beibei took Shenhong to a cafe on campus and ordered 2 cups of coffee and 2 bamboo baskets of waffles. Girls don't have a big appetite, so waffles are enough for them. What's wrong with senior brother Wang Di today? Fang Beibei took a sip of coffee and complained to Shenhong, so annoying. He likes you. Shenhong giggled and said, he's just that kind of person. He's not serious at all. I've told you before. Who told you to team up with him? I didn't know he was so excessive. Fang Beibei shook her head and said, what should I do? We still have to finish discussing our homework. Just bear with it. Shenhong comforted, don't worry, I'm here. But, do you know? Shenhong said with a smile, a lot of people in the class said that you two are a good match. You're so beautiful, and Wang Di is also quite handsome, why don't you consider it? I heard from old Wang that our modeling competition team had such a pair 2 years ago. You two are a golden couple. If you two are successful, old Wang will definitely talk about you two every year. Senior sister. Fang Beibei angrily said, don't talk nonsense. Looking at the smiling Shenhong, Fang Beibei hesitated for a moment and said, I already have a boyfriend. Shenhong was taken aback. She asked, you have a boyfriend? It can't be, right? I remember you told me before that you don't have one. During the holiday, when the training just started, Wang Di asked Shenhong to ask about Fang Beibei's situation. Fang Beibei told Shenhong that she didn't have a boyfriend. I just had one yesterday. Fang Beibei's face blushed and said shyly. Oh, look at your happy face. Shenhong tickled Fang Beibei's cheek and said with a grin, quick, tell senior sister what's going on. Shenhong and Fang Beibei had a very good relationship. In just over a month, they had almost become best friends. Looking at her gossipy face, Fang Beibei covered her face and shook her head shyly. In the end, Shenhong urged her several times before Fang Beibei told her what happened yesterday. It's not romantic at all. Looks like you've liked him for a long time. Shenhong hit the nail on the head. Then, she asked in a gossipy manner, is he also from our school? Is he in the same grade as you? How old is he? What's his name? Do I know him? Fang Beibei said angrily, senior sister, you have so many questions, how do you want me to answer? Answer me one by one. Shenhong urged. Fang Beibei could only give her a brief introduction of Poplar Fruit's situation. As she spoke, Shenhong responded with a fuss. Wow, senior brother. So you're into this. Unfortunately, our class is Wang Di, TSK. He's in graduate school. Or a translator. That must be very profitable. Let me tell you, I have a few senior sisters who are studying translation. They are all rich ladies. But, they only studied for 2 years. Doesn't that mean he graduated before you graduated? Oh, he's studying for a PhD. That's not right. Is there a master's and a PhD in a foreign language school? The dean's disciple. No wonder he's so good. Wait, who is this Kiki you're talking about? Daughter? Daughter. Shenhong stared at Fang Beibei in shock. She couldn't say a word. She couldn't believe her ears. Her good friend's junior sister actually found a boyfriend with a child. Although he was a single father, sugar daddy. Shenhong looked at Fang Beibei with a strange expression. This sentence jumped out in her heart. Beibei. Shenhong held back for a while before saying, you might as well look for Wang Di. Fang Beibei frowned and anxiously cried, senior sister. Poplar Fruit is a very good person. Fang Beibei explained to Shenhong for a while, saying a lot about Poplar Fruit's situation. Anyway, it's not what you think. Show me his photo. Shenhong still didn't believe it. She snatched Fang Beibei's phone and directly opened the photo album. In the end, Shenhong couldn't find it. There are no photos of him. Fang Beibei shook her head and said. She didn't like to take photos like Poplar Fruit. Moreover, before the two of them officially became a couple, there were a few photos of Poplar Fruit and Givenchy. She saved them on her computer and deleted them from her phone, worried that her family would find out. There are photos on his Weibo. Fang Beibei thought for a while, took the phone, opened Weibo, and found Poplar Fruit's Weibo. Kiki's father. Shenhong came over to take a look and commented, there are so many photos of children. His daughter looks quite cute. At least he's a caring man. Shenhong added in her heart. Most of Poplar Fruit's Weibo were photos of Kiki. Fang Beibei flipped through 2 pages before she found a photo of Poplar Fruit and Kiki. This photo was taken when they were traveling outside, and Kiki was the main character, while Poplar Fruit's face was shown. Wow, he's quite handsome. Wang Di is compared to him in an instant. Shenhong shouted as she grabbed the photo and took a closer look. Fang Beibei pursed her lips. She felt that Shenhong comparing Poplar Fruit with Wang Di was an insult to Poplar Fruit. Besides, Poplar Fruit's selfie was completely to highlight Kiki. His appearance was still a little different from the real person. If they looked at the real person, he would be even more handsome. Shenhong looked at some of Poplar Fruit's Weibo. From the content, Poplar Fruit was indeed a good man, just like what Fang Beibei said. She now believed 80% of it. When are you going to bring him out so that I can help you check him out? Shenhong smiled and pushed Fang Beibei. What do I need to check him out for? Fang Beibei asked doubtfully. Don't think that you can protect him just because he's your boyfriend. You guys aren't married yet. Shenhong laughed, men nowadays are cunning. I don't want you to be deceived by bad men. He won't deceive me. Fang Beibei shook her head. She was too familiar with Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit didn't hide the things that he usually did from her. Besides, that guy was usually a nerd and an otaku. He couldn't wait to love her. How could he be willing to deceive her? Looking at Fang Beibei's stubborn look, Shenhong had to say, okay. It's not checking him out. You have to bring him out for a meeting, right? You've seen senior sister's boyfriend. The one in your house, you have to treat him to a meal. Besides, if you bring him out for a walk, Wang Di won't pester you when he sees you. Shenhong came up with an idea. He's very busy. I don't know if he's free. Fang Beibei hesitated. She remembered that Poplar Fruit seemed to be quite busy these days. If I ask him to come out, would he be willing? Fang Beibei muttered in her heart. Chapter 658. After having lunch with Song Jiwen and the others, Poplar Fruit went to the military hospital. He asked for the address from Big Brother Yang Jingdong. At first, he refused to give it to him because he didn't want Poplar Fruit to visit him, which made Poplar Fruit very surprised. Later, when Poplar Fruit brought up Big Brother Hewenjua, he obediently sent the address over. Hewenjua couldn't be counted on. When Poplar Fruit returned to Yangcheng, he called him, but his phone was turned off. It seemed that he had returned to the army. When he arrived at the hospital, Poplar Fruit found Yang Zhengdong's room. As soon as he entered the room, he couldn't help but laugh. Hey, hey! Didn't you say you wouldn't laugh at me? Yang Zhengdong shouted. How could he not laugh? He was wearing a patient's gown and lying on the bed. That's right, he was lying on his stomach and not sleeping. Not only that, he also had to raise his butt to prevent his heavily bandaged butt from touching other places and causing the wound to split open again. In this way, he had to put his head on the pillow. Kiki was being carried by her father. She was still sleepy at noon, but when she saw the scene in the ward, she became energetic. The little fellow was a child, so she pulled her father's neck and asked curiously, Papa, why is Uncle sleeping like this? In her mind, the scene that she saw in Song Jiwen's house in the morning on the Discovery Channel appeared. She giggled and said, it seems to be ostrich. The Discovery Channel was broadcasting a BBC program in English. The little fellow remembered the English pronunciation of an ostrich. Although she didn't pronounce it correctly, it was still considered very good. Ostrich. Poplar Fruit laughed, ticking the head in the sand, with the head in the air. Ostrich? Burying their heads in the sand and then exposing their buttocks? Poplar Fruit's explanation was a little complicated, but he gestured with his other hand, and Kiki understood. She nodded happily and shouted loudly, Carrot oh carrot, yes. Poplar Fruit, are you doing this on purpose? You came here to make fun of me. Yang Zhengdong didn't understand, but he could see clearly. He shouted in shame and indignation. Ha, brother Zhengdong, don't be angry. I was just explaining to Kiki about the ostrich. It has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with you. Poplar Fruit laughed and walked over with the fruit basket. Poplar Fruit didn't mean to mock him. It was just a harmless joke with an old friend who hadn't seen each other for a long time. Yang Zhengdong also understood that Poplar Fruit was just trying to relieve his embarrassment. After putting down the fruit basket on the bedside table, Poplar Fruit also put Kiki on the ground. Then, he found a few cushions and stuffed them under brother Yang Zhengdong's stomach, so that he could have a comfortable position to chat. I say, little girl, don't mess around. Uncle is in pain here. Yang Zhengdong's somewhat terrified voice came out. Of course, his tone was more joking. Poplar Fruit looked down and saw Kiki standing by the bed unknowingly. She clung to the edge of the white bedsheet and stared covetously at Yang Zhengdong's tightly wrapped buttocks. This was really very different from ordinary people. It was a bit like a giant panda with a thick neck and a thick waist. Kiki pondered, as if she wanted to pat it. Of course, with Kiki's height, she definitely wouldn't be able to reach it. However, 2 months ago, this little girl was able to collude with that silly dog Jean Z to secretly open the door and run to Song Jiwen's house to watch TV. If Poplar Fruit didn't pay attention, who knows where she would move a stool and climb up. Poplar Fruit thought it was funny, but he still pulled Kiki away and said, Kiki, you can only watch, you can't do anything, do you understand? Later, Dad will peel an apple for you to eat. Kiki reluctantly glanced at it twice, then pouted her little mouth and let go. Poplar Fruit found a chair and sat down. Kiki didn't sit, she leaned on her father's leg. Her eyes were a little sleepy, but she still stared at the big, red Fuji apple in her father's hand. From time to time, she stuck out her pink little tongue and licked her lips. How is brother's injury now? Poplar Fruit asked while cutting the long apple skin with the knife. It's a lot better. Yesterday, when I changed the dressing, it said that the wound is healing. It should be fine in less than a month. Yang Zhengdong said, now it doesn't hurt that much. It's just itchy, from time to time it will come, but I can't scratch it. It's like 100 claws scratching my heart. Yang Zhengdong said frantically, I'd rather die from the pain than be itchy like this. Bear with it for a while and it will be over. Poplar Fruit comforted. While they were talking, Poplar Fruit finished peeling the first apple. He cut it, divided it into 4 parts, and dug out the core in the middle. He was not in a hurry to pass it to Kiki, who was about to drool. Instead, he washed her hands first. Poplar Fruit took a piece from the peeled apple and passed it to Kiki. Kiki was about to grab it and stuff it into her mouth. That sour, sweet and crunchy taste, she couldn't resist thinking about it. But her father didn't let go. She was stunned. The little fellow pouted her mouth and looked at her father in confusion. Poplar Fruit's eyes were smiling. He looked at his daughter and said, "Kiki, you can't eat it by yourself first. You have to give it to Uncle first." Letting go of his hand, Poplar Fruit gently pushed Kiki and said with a smile, "Go, give it to Uncle and say, 'Uncle, eat the apple.'" Kiki hesitated. Her small right hand held the apple. She looked at her father for a while, then looked at the tempting apple in her hand. What should she do? On one side was the apple that she had been waiting for a long time. She wanted to eat it so badly. She couldn't wait a moment longer. But, on the other side was her father's request. She couldn't disobey her father's words. What should she do? Swallowing a mouthful of water, although Kiki was reluctant, she still pouted and turned to the bedside. She handed the apple to the uncle and said dryly, "Uncle, eat the apple." Yang Jingdong smiled. He took the apple and said with a smile, "Thank you, Kiki." Yang Jingdong knew that Poplar Fruit was educating Kiki, so he didn't refuse. Yang Jingdong took a bite and said that it was delicious. Kiki stood there with tears in her eyes. She looked at the delicious apple that was just about to be eaten by someone else. "Come, Kiki." Poplar Fruit wouldn't let his daughter down. He smiled and waved at Kiki and said, "Come, this piece is yours." Kiki's face bloomed with a smile. She hurriedly ran over and took the apple. Holding it with both hands, she happily gnawed on it. Kiki's mouth wasn't big, so it was a bit strenuous for her to gnaw on the apple. However, it didn't stop her from leaving teeth marks and saliva on the apple. Poplar Fruit touched his daughter's little head and looked at her with appreciation. However, he didn't continue to say anything. Modesty made people happier than monopolizing it. Kiki might not understand this principle now. He would let her slowly experience it in some small things in life. Poplar Fruit understood that with Kiki's smart little head, she definitely wouldn't let him down. Chapter 659. Brother Yang Zhengdong's injury wasn't very serious, and he had also passed the most uncomfortable period. When he had just finished the operation, he couldn't move, and even had to be intubated, so Poplar Fruit accompanied him for a while, and then went home with Kiki. In the afternoon, Poplar Fruit also received a call from Zheng Yujie. Zheng Yujie was very happy to tell Poplar Fruit a piece of good news: Peng Yu would be the future president of their publishing house. Speaking of which, Peng Yu could be considered as an old member of Dongxin Publishing. If it weren't for the appearance of Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie, she might have stayed in the position of chief editor of Dongxin Publishing until she retired. However, the position of president given to her by Zheng Yujie rekindled Peng Yu's youthful passion. Who didn't want to prove themselves? In terms of qualifications, achievements, and ability, Peng Yu was qualified to be the vice president or even the president of Dongxin Publishing. However, Dongxin was a large company controlled by the state, not a private company or a foreign company. It didn't mean that you could be the president just because you were talented. Peng Yu's background was still lacking, and this was almost an insurmountable moat. She was 50 years old this year, and in another 5 years, she would retire, even if she felt that she still had energy, but in these 5 years, she couldn't see any hope for further progress. Moreover, if there was any trouble, she might not even be able to stay in a stable position until she retired. Previously, the second-generation official wanted to gain experience in Dongxin, and he was eyeing Peng Yu's position. At that time, Peng Yu was in danger, and she even thought that her good luck had come to an end. Fortunately, the official son had other choices. Moreover, Deng Baoyan had also intervened at that time. That was how she managed to get through the ordeal safely. Peng Yu felt that she shouldn't wait for death. Moreover, she still had 5 years, or even longer, to challenge a higher position with abundant energy and prove her ability. There was a word on the internet that described her current wish, to prove her ability. Of course, Peng Yu had received many offers for the position of the president of a publishing house. If she wanted to leave, she would have left long ago. Why was only Zheng Yujie's proposal that moved her? That was because Zheng Yujie's suggestion for a publishing house was unprecedented. However, it was also Peng Yu's specialty. Peng Yu's greatest contribution to Dongxin was the introduction of foreign books for more than 20 years. This concept, she was the first one that year. The reason why Dongxin was able to stand out among the many publishing houses in China and become one of the top publishing groups was also because of their momentum in importing foreign books. Over the years, Peng Yu had a lot of dealings with foreign publishers, so she had a deep understanding of the situation abroad. This was exactly what Zheng Yujie lacked. Zheng Yujie's publishing house didn't lack anything, but she lacked a helmsman like Peng Yu. In the field of translation, Poplar Fruit was not inferior to anyone, and still had unfathomable potential. Moreover, he had a good relationship with the current largest translation trading platform in China, Cinda Translation. Through Cinda, Poplar Fruit could gather many of the best translators in the domestic translation industry to serve the publishing house. In the field of editing, Zheng Yujie was already a senior in the industry. She had the ability to be the chief editor, and in terms of leadership, she was not much worse than Peng Yu. However, Zheng Yujie was still young. If it was only her, she wouldn't be able to control the other deputy chief editors. Moreover, in terms of overall control, Zheng Yujie still lacked experience. More importantly, in the future, if they wanted to publish Chinese book translations abroad, they would definitely have to deal with the established publishers. In order to deal with them, they would need Peng Yu's leadership. As for the problem of money, Peng Yu didn't believe that it would be an obstacle for Zheng Yujie. On the surface, Zheng Yujie's aunt's company's market value was more than 20 billion. Everyone in Beijing knew that she had many hidden businesses, which were providing financial support for the Zheng family, which was walking on the road of revival. Zheng Yujie was her aunt's favorite child. How could Zheng Yujie not have a few $100 million to set up a publishing house? Although this is a field that few people have explored in China, maybe it's an opportunity. Peng Yu told herself. Although, at her age, she had to be cautious about job hopping. However, with this idea, after a few days of struggle, Peng Yu finally decided to accept Zheng Yujie's invitation. Peng Yu was a decisive person. After she made the decision, she started to go through the resignation procedures. Although a big group like Dongxin lacked talents like Peng Yu, after all, they didn't care about the company's benefits, right? The senior management were all on the political route. After Peng Yu left, it was equivalent to a big pit, which could be used to exchange for countless political benefits. Therefore, Peng Yu's resignation application was approved quickly. Around the middle of September, she would go down south with the Zheng family's funds in advance to prepare for the purchase of the publishing house and poaching people and other work. At the end of the year, Zheng Yujie would also leave Dongxin and blow the horn of war in one fell swoop. Teacher Peng Yu is really desperate. Poplar Fruit used the honorific title and sighed to Zheng Yujie. I'm also very hardworking, okay? Zheng Yujie complained, you don't know how many times I was interrogated by my mother after I went back to Beijing. Then, I worked hard to get the investment from my aunt. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, it's okay. It's better to get the pain over with than to prolong the pain. You just have to endure this period of time. When you make some achievements, they won't dare to criticize you anymore. Then you have to help me quickly. I can't wait that long. Zheng Yujie changed into a coquettish tone. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, don't worry. I'm now doing the translation of some classic fantasy novels. When the publishing house opens, we will have our own main books. We will launch an English version first. Then, we will strive for instant success. Oh right. Zheng Yujie whispered to Poplar Fruit, you can take a look at the valuable online novels first. Make a list for Aunt Pang. She will secretly buy the foreign copyright first. We can't wait for the news to spread and they will raise the price. In the phone call with Zheng Yujie, Poplar Fruit did not mention Fang Beibei. In fact, when he received the phone call, he wanted to tell Zheng Yujie that he had an official girlfriend. However, when the words were about to come out of his mouth, Poplar Fruit held back. At that time, the image of Zheng Yujie crying out loudly with tears in her eyes appeared in Poplar Fruit's mind. Even if you have a girlfriend and get married, I will still wait for you. Poplar Fruit could not bear to recall that scene. Perhaps, it would be unfair to her if he didn't make it clear, but if he did, it would be the greatest harm. Chapter 660. Fang Beibei walked briskly up the stairs. As soon as she opened the door, her delicate nose twitched. Without taking off her shoes, she stuck her head in and called out, "Uncle. It smells so good." The first to respond was Kiki. The little guy was riding a golden, big horse, Goldie. He ran over and said with a smile, "Sister Beibei, look, Kiki is so awesome." "It's Goldie, he's so awesome." Fang Beibei changed her shoes and walked in. She affectionately patted Goldie's head. Goldie responded by licking her hand. She smiled and said, "Goldie has to walk slowly. Don't knock Kiki down." Poplar Fruit closed the kitchen door and the sound of the smoking machine was a little loud. He did not hear Fang Beibei's cry. However, as if their hearts were connected, he turned around and saw her smiling at Goldie and Kiki. Poplar Fruit pushed open the kitchen door and said with a smile, "You're back. It'll be ready in a while." "I want to see," Fang Beibei cheerfully called out. She closed the door and followed Poplar Fruit into the kitchen with her slippers. "It smells so good. Is this sweet and sour pork ribs?" Fang Beibei pointed at a dish that was already prepared and asked. The pork ribs were fried until they were crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. The aroma was overwhelming. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "To be exact, this is braised pork ribs. Do you want to try one?" "Can I?" Fang Beibei held her hands and looked at Poplar Fruit with stars in her eyes. "This doesn't count as eating secretly, right?" "Ha, it's just the two of us. How could we eat it secretly?" Poplar Fruit said with a bewitching smile. "Try it and tell me if it tastes good." Fang Beibei squeezed beside Poplar Fruit and looked at him with a tired expression. She said coquettishly, "I haven't washed my hands yet. You have to feed me." Her soft body made Poplar Fruit's heart skip a beat. However, he still turned his body slightly because he was wearing an apron. He was worried that the oil stains would stain Fang Beibei's body. "Can't you wash your hands before eating?" Of course, Poplar Fruit would not say something that would spoil the mood. Although Poplar Fruit usually looked like a middle-aged father, in fact, he was only 24 years old. In his chest was the heart of a young man who liked to play. "Sure," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He washed his right hand, pressed the head and tail, picked up a piece of pork rib, and handed it to Fang Beibei. Fang Beibei stood intimately on Poplar Fruit's left side. She hugged Poplar Fruit's left hand with both hands and moved her face closer. From Poplar Fruit's angle, he could see Fang Beibei's flawless side profile. The only flaw was that some of her naughty long hair went past her ears like a bead curtain. "Is it good?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. He looked at Fang Beibei like a puppy, seriously gnawing on the pork rib. This look was so cute. As if she felt that Poplar Fruit was comparing her to a puppy, Fang Beibei turned her face, looked at him reproachfully, and said, "It's delicious. Move it, there's still more to eat." Poplar Fruit's finger moved slightly, letting Fong Beibei finish the pork rib. Fong Beibei's mouth was a little red from eating. She looked at Poplar Fruit's fiery eyes, shyly licked her lips, pulled at Poplar Fruit's left hand, and said angrily, "Don't look at me like that." "Okay. After eating, you can go out and rest. Wait for me to cook the remaining 2 dishes and the soup, then we can eat." Poplar Fruit threw the rib into the trash can at his feet, squeezed Fong Beibei's little hand with his left hand, and smiled warmly. "No, I want to watch you cook." Fong Beibei acted coquettishly and did not let go of Poplar Fruit's hand. "Uncle, you're so good, I want to learn from you." Poplar Fruit raised his left hand, and Fong Beibei's 2 hands were still hanging on it. He smiled and said, "With you like this, how can I cook?" Fong Beibei put down her left hand, but her right hand was still held by Poplar Fruit. She opened the 5 fingers of Poplar Fruit's left hand, put her 5 fingers in it, and then said mischievously, "Since you want to learn, I'll be your assistant. My left hand is your left hand." Looking down to the left, Fong Beibei's face was red under the light of the kitchen hood, and her eyes were filled with hope and sweetness. Why not? Poplar Fruit liked the present situation. He smiled, shrugged, and said, "Okay, then help me bring the plate of prawns over." The 2 guys who had to stand together hand in hand while cooking, stumbled and bumped as they finished the rest of the dishes. Fong Beibei walked in front of Poplar Fruit, holding a plate of dishes, and Poplar Fruit was holding 2 plates. She happily placed the dishes on the table first, and muttered, "It smells so good, it's so delicious." Fong Beibei picked up the plate of hot and sour shredded potatoes and stir-fried them twice. Of course, the heat and taste were controlled by Poplar Fruit, but Fong Beibei felt a sense of accomplishment. This plate of dishes that looked delicious and smelled like an appetizer also had a part to play in it. Poplar Fruit knew that although the latter 2 dishes were not bad, in terms of effect, they were not as good as the ones he stir-fried alone. His cooperation with Fong Beibei was somewhat delayed, and even though Poplar Fruit made up for it a lot, it was still a long way from the best. But, what did it matter? Was this the ultimate taste that he and Fong Beibei were pursuing? In fact, cooking came from life, and so did Poplar Fruit. No matter how delicious the dishes were, they were just embellishments in life. What he and Fong Beibei enjoyed was the joy of the intimate interaction between the 2 of them when they were cooking. Whether the taste of the dish was better or worse, it wasn't that important anymore. "Kiki, come, come." Fong Beibei waved to Kiki. She picked up 2 golden hot and sour shredded potatoes and sent them to Kiki's mouth, and asked happily, "Kiki, try it, is it delicious?" Because it was a Cantonese dish, Poplar Fruit put very little chili, and it was almost impossible to taste the spicy taste, so Kiki did not show any resistance when she ate it. One must know that the little fellow could not eat spicy food. She was very disgusted with the smell of fish and spicy food. "Slowly, chew before eating." Fong Beibei squatted at the side and advised. "Delicious." Kiki smacked her lips, licked her teeth, and nodded vigorously. She did not know what adjectives to use to express her praise, so she just opened her mouth. "More?" "Okay, sister will get it for you." This was actually the best praise. Fong Beibei happily stood up and gave Kiki 2 more shredded potatoes. At this time, Goldie also came over. It looked at Fong Beibei eagerly, and stuck out its tongue, as if it also wanted to taste the delicious food that its little master praised. "You have your own, don't fight with Kiki." Fong Beibei smiled and flicked its wet nose, and did not give it any. Chapter 661. After dinner, Poplar Fruit asked Fong Beibei to do her homework. Poplar Fruit had long passed the time when he needed to be with his girlfriend all the time. After becoming a father, he was much more mature than his peers. Fong Beibei was a little reluctant, and wanted to sit with Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "I'll take care of the little princess first. She still needs to take a bath. Wait for a while, I'll accompany you later." Fang Beibei didn't insist. She really needed to concentrate on her homework. During the day, they discussed a few good hypotheses, and then designed the corresponding mathematical structure around them, which was the modeling. Next, they needed to further solve, analyze, test, and summarize. Tonight, Fang Beibei needed to focus on the modeling during the day, and calculate the data for the part she was responsible for. This step was very troublesome. Although she had the help of software such as SPSS, Fang Beibei still had to enter the parameters very carefully. If she made a mistake in the decimal point, it might cause a big deviation in the later data. Poplar Fruit gave Kiki a bath. Kiki was very excited when she took a bath today, because she could see her good friend, the little yellow duck, again. In the past, when he gave Kiki a bath, Poplar Fruit had to be very careful, because Kiki couldn't sit still. Now that Kiki had grown up, Poplar Fruit's burden was a lot less. He could let Kiki sit in the bathtub. The water wasn't deep, so she could play with it however she wanted. The yellow rubber duckling was brought back from the house in Jindi district today. Kiki hadn't seen this little friend for almost 2 months. Poplar Fruit thought that Kiki had forgotten the old because of the new one, but she still remembered. Moreover, before taking a bath, she excitedly ran back to the room and took out the yellow duck from the box. She insisted on taking a bath with it. Well, with the little yellow duck, Kiki couldn't even take a bath properly. Poplar Fruit was drenched by her and had to take another bath. He had taken a bath right after he came back to move his things. Since she didn't sleep in the afternoon, Kiki was also sleepy. She played with her father on the bed for a while before obediently letting her father carry her back to her little bed to sleep. However, before going to bed, Kiki pulled her father aside and asked him to tell her a bedtime story. This was a habit that he had developed when he was in the Hmong village. When Poplar Fruit taught the children, he would often tell some interesting stories to liven up the atmosphere of the class. Then, Kiki would be addicted to it. There was no entertainment in the Meow village at night, so Kiki asked her father to tell her a story and then fell asleep with the story. For this reason, Poplar Fruit even searched for a lot of stories that were suitable for children on the internet and memorized them. Later, he thought of a way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, which was to tell Kiki English stories. In fact, Kiki was often exposed to these stories when she was with her father. Under the influence of her father, she could already understand many English letters and ordinary conversations. Therefore, when Poplar Fruit read the English version of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales to her, Kiki often needed to ask her father for the meaning in the story at first, but later, she could understand it very well. Poplar Fruit felt that listening to the story and learning English at the same time was more effective than letting Kiki study in boredom. After coaxing Kiki to sleep, Poplar Fruit turned off the bedroom light and went back to the living room. Fang Beibei was sitting in front of the desk, looking serious as she struggled with the computer. Poplar Fruit looked at her, but he did not go over. Instead, he sat down on the sofa next to her and turned on Song Jiwen's computer. He logged into Shinda's translation platform and looked for some gold medal small language tasks to do. Even though Poplar Fruit was tapping rhythmically on the keyboard, Fang Beibei did not raise her head to look at him. She was already immersed in her own mathematics world. This was the difference between a top student and an ordinary person. Top students did not need to be forced to study by others. They had a strong drive. Moreover, when they were studying, they would be very immersed. They would not be distracted by a beautiful bird outside the window. Even if they studied for an hour, their learning would be 5 hours or more than an ordinary person. Poplar Fruit himself was not a top student. At least before he became smart, his studies were the same as Song Jiwen's. They were just getting by. Even in school, they were only at the average level. For some subjects that they were not good at, they just did not want to fail. They did not have any higher goals. Fang Beibei was different. She was the best among her peers since she was young. If it were not for the fact that she was partial to her subjects, she would have been studying at Beijing University. Looking at her serious look, Poplar Fruit knew that she had entered her top student mode. Even though Fang Beibei was acting coquettishly and wanted him to study with her, Poplar Fruit would not disturb her at this time. He could not bear to disturb her. Her serious look was like a devout angel, beautiful and holy, with a halo that made people cherish her. The clock ticked twice. Unknowingly, as the two of them studied and worked quietly, the old residential area was already immersed in the quiet night. When Fang Beibei sat down on the sofa, Poplar Fruit felt it. After he finished typing this line, he turned his head with a smile and looked at his beloved woman. "What are you translating?" When Fang Beibei saw Poplar Fruit stop, she happily squeezed next to Poplar Fruit, as if the large sofa could not accommodate her thin figure. "A foreign company's contract, in Italian." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Have you finished your homework?" "No, I just finished tonight's task. With the data, I can discuss it with them tomorrow." Fang Beibei leaned on Poplar Fruit and said, "You do your work first, don't worry about me. I'll just take a look." Poplar Fruit felt Fang Beibei's soft body and fresh fragrance, which made him more or less restless, but he was still able to control himself. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Don't worry, I can translate while talking to you." "Multitasking? Then will the quality of the manuscript be bad?" Fang Beibei asked worriedly. "No, actually, when I read the original text, I already know how to translate it." Poplar Fruit did not stop typing, he demonstrated to her, "Look, these are the words I'm typing, they have already formed in my mind." Poplar Fruit's multitasking ability was getting more and more skilled, he could even translate the next manuscript in his mind while he was typing the previous manuscript. This made his translation speed far faster than any of the gold medal translators on the Shinda platform. "That's amazing!" Fang Beibei exclaimed, "Why don't I have such an amazing ability?" Although Poplar Fruit was chatting with Fang Beibei while he was typing, Fang Beibei was not willing to speak at this time. Although she knew that even if she spoke, Poplar Fruit would not be affected, this feeling of hindering her boyfriend was not good. Chapter 662. After translating the task, Poplar Fruit tossed his laptop aside. He could continue working after Fang Beibei went to bed. At this time, he still had time to spend with his girlfriend. After peeling the 2 apples, he separated them like he did in the afternoon and removed the cores. However, this time, Poplar Fruit did not split them into 4 equal portions. Instead, he split them into 8 equal portions. This way, he could eat 1 apple at a time and it would be more convenient. Fang Beibei even ran to the kitchen and sprinkled some salt in, saying that it would taste better this way. "Uncle, let's think of a nice nickname for each other, shall we?" Fang Beibei grabbed Poplar Fruit's right hand. The two of them continued to sit together with their fingers interlocked. Poplar Fruit picked up a piece of apple with a toothpick and fed it to her. Then, he smiled and said, "Have you been watching Korean variety shows recently? Which couple are you chasing now?" When Poplar Fruit was chatting with Fang Beibei on the phone previously, Fang Beibei told him about many Korean variety shows. The one she talked about the most was, "We're Married." Of course, she paid the most attention to the Chinese team captain Victoria and Nichkun in FX. This couple was nicknamed Winnie and Mr. and Mrs. Winnie by the fans in the country and was highly sought after by Fang Beibei. Unfortunately, before Fang Beibei could start watching, Winnie and Mr. and Mrs. Winnie had already gotten off the show. This made her feel very regretful. Poplar Fruit also watched some Korean variety shows because of Fang Beibei. Of course, the ones he watched were picked out by Fang Beibei for him to watch. Until now, he only had an understanding of them. Poplar Fruit did not really like Korean variety shows, but he did not dislike them either. That was because he did not pay much attention to the entertainment industry and was not as fanatical as those fans who chased after celebrities. However, although he was very calm, Poplar Fruit still thought highly of Korean variety shows. In terms of content innovation and the dedication of the hosts, none of the major television stations in the country could compare. I'm not chasing after them. After watching Winnie and her husband, there's nothing else to see. Especially the recent season. Fang Beibei curled her lips and said. Well, it seems that I'm going to change my name today. Poplar Fruit laughed. Are you finally going to change my nickname? If it were you, you'd also be a weird uncle. Fang Beibei hugged Poplar Fruit's arm and looked up at him. Her eyes curved into crescents as she giggled. You tell me first. What do you want to call me? Beibei sounds pretty good. Why don't we just call her Beibei? Poplar Fruit scratched his head and gave a completely unoriginal suggestion. Fang Beibei pinched Poplar Fruit's arm as she pouted and shook her head. Not good, not good. You don't even use your brain. It wasn't that Beibei was bad, but Fang Beibei felt that everyone who knew her called her Beibei. If Poplar Fruit still called her that, it really wasn't distinguishable at all. Especially when Fang Beibei remembered that annoying and disgusting senior brother Wang Di also called her Beibei, as if she was very close to him. Fang Beibei felt that she couldn't let her boyfriend call her by this nickname. Then what should I call her? Fang Fang. Poplar Fruit was having a headache. Xiaobei. The nickname Fang Fang sounded weird. Fang Beibei rejected it immediately. Xiaobei, she felt like she was calling Beckham, or baby, baby. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said. Baby? Fang Beibei felt a little moved, but she was still a little hesitant. She always felt that it was a little imperfect. Poplar Fruit had an idea. He looked at Fang Beibei's glasses and smiled gently. How about this, I'll call you Baby. Baby? When Fang Beibei heard this name, half of her body went limp. She felt that Poplar Fruit's eyes could speak, and a strong sense of love flowed out from his eyes. Yes. Poplar Fruit pinched Fang Beibei's left hand and gently explained, Baby is first of all a repetition of words. It's better to call it Baby, isn't it? Also, it can correspond with your name and combine into the meaning of baby. Most importantly, you and Kiki are the most important girls in my life. I will love you like I love Kiki, protect you like a baby, cherish you like a treasure, and never let go of you. Although it was an explanation, Fang Beibei was more willing to believe that this was Poplar Fruit's confession of love. Her heart melted when she heard it. Looking at Poplar Fruit with a gentle gaze, Fang Beibei's heart was filled with tenderness. Perhaps at this time, if Poplar Fruit kissed her, she would most likely not refuse. Poplar Fruit looked at his girlfriend with a smile. In fact, he was also moved by Fang Beibei's current appearance, but he still remembered Fang Beibei's previous request. Take it slow. Feelings need to be brewed for years to become a fragrant wine. Advancing by leaps and bounds was not suitable for them. Do you like it? Baby. Poplar Fruit called out softly. I like it. Fang Beibei smiled sweetly. Then what do you call me? Poplar Fruit asked gently. Oh, Fang Beibei pouted as she thought. She asked, what do you like me to call you? Poplar Fruit laughed and said, I like whatever you call me. Because you are a baby. When Fang Beibei heard this, she called out softly and put her head on Poplar Fruit's arm, insisting that he give her a suggestion. My family all call me Fruit. Many of my friends also call me that. And then that guy Mosquito, you know, he calls me Old Fruit. It seems that I only have these many nicknames. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said. Does no one call you Yanghua? The pronunciation sounds so good. Fang Beibei giggled and said, why don't I be like Xiao Longnu and call you Guer? Poplar Fruit was stunned. His eyes suddenly lost their spirit. It was as if he had traveled through time and space and saw the past. There was also a girl who called him Guer. Fang Beibei felt that Poplar Fruit's face was a little ugly. It was as if the air had frozen. Her heart was in a mess. She jokingly said, "Hey, give me some reaction." Poplar Fruit took a deep breath. The people of the past had already drifted away with the river of time. He could not live in the past. He should cherish the people in front of him. I think it's better not to. Poplar Fruit shook his head. He did not try to hide it. He smiled and said, "This is what my ex-girlfriend called me." Fang Beibei's expression was a little sluggish. Her eyes were a little complicated. Her mouth muttered, as if she wanted to ask something but could not say it. Poplar Fruit stretched out his left hand and rubbed Fang Beibei's head. He smiled and said, "Why aren't you saying anything? Aren't you thinking too much? I don't want you to call me that, not because of old feelings. I don't want to relive the unhappiness of the past. Even if it's just a misunderstanding, I don't want it. I care about you. I don't want to let you go like that time. Because you are far more important than her." Chapter 663. Are you still angry? Poplar Fruit asked apprehensively. He was worried that Fang Beibei would hold a grudge against him after he mentioned her ex. In fact, Fang Beibei's grievances had already disappeared when Poplar Fruit took the initiative to explain. However, she still refused to let it go. She pulled Poplar Fruit's arm and said coquettishly, "No, you have to compensate me. It wasn't easy for me to think of a good one." This made Poplar Fruit's head hurt. He had to think of a nickname for himself. It had to be humorous, intimate, and catchy. This was a very awkward thing to do. Poplar Fruit thought of a few names, but they were all rejected by Fang Beibei. "Baby, you think about it too. I can't think of one even if I break my head." Poplar Fruit scratched his head with his left hand and said, "I thought of a good one, but you said no." Fang Beibei said angrily, "That's just an exception. There's no second one." Poplar Fruit smiled and raised his left hand. He swore, "Baby, you name one. I promise I won't object. I'll like it no matter what it is." "Really?" Fang Beibei turned around and knelt on the sofa to look at him. She asked in surprise. Poplar Fruit saw a trace of craftiness in her beautiful eyes. He felt a little regretful. It seemed like he had made a very wrong decision. However, Fang Beibei gave him a chance to back out. She held Poplar Fruit's hand with her left hand, and then her right hand suddenly reached over and sealed Poplar Fruit's mouth. The two looked at each other. Fang Beibei said in a threatening tone, "A man's word is worth 9 tons. You can't back out." Since she said so, what else could Poplar Fruit do? He raised his left hand and Fang Beibei let go of his mouth. Poplar Fruit said, "I won't back out. It's just that you can't go too far." "I won't go overboard, hee." Fang Beibei shifted her butt and found a more comfortable position. Her white and thin thighs touched the Poplar Fruit. The Poplar Fruit immediately felt a chill. Girls belonged to the cold type of creatures. This saying was not wrong at all. "Didn't you call me baby? Then I'll call you uncle," Fang Beibei said with a smile. She also carefully looked at the Poplar Fruit, afraid that the Poplar Fruit would cause a big reaction. Poplar Fruit shook his head with a bitter smile and asked, "Why is it still called this? Shouldn't you change it?" Originally, Poplar Fruit thought that he would be able to get rid of the strange title of uncle. At the very least, he would be able to be on the same level as his girlfriend. In the end, after talking for so long, he was back to square one. "I didn't even call you weird uncle. Are you still not satisfied?" Fang Beibei used her arm to push the Poplar Fruit and said with a smile. Could he say that he was not satisfied? Poplar Fruit said with a bitter smile, "It's not that I'm not satisfied. It's just that the nickname I gave you was so creative. But, when it came to me, why didn't you change it?" Fang Beibei sat cross-legged and let go of the poplar fruit's hand. She gestured with both hands and explained to the poplar fruit, "You see, you called me baby, right? Then it gave me the feeling that you're either my father or my uncle. In any case, you're one generation older. You can't count it that way. The meaning of baby is just the literal meaning. It's mainly to express affection." Poplar fruit gently reminded. "Well, I don't blame you for your poor language skills. Uncle is also a nickname. It's not like I want you to be my uncle. Don't you think so?" Fang Beibei retorted. "What's more," Fang Beibei paused, "that Yang Guo can call Xiao Longnu auntie. Why can't I call you uncle?" Poplar fruit was stunned for a moment. He looked at Fang Beibei's pouting face and realized that Fang Beibei hadn't completely let go of her ex-girlfriend. Poplar fruit reached out and pulled Fang Beibei's left hand, which was on his leg, over. Their fingers were tightly intertwined. Then, he pulled her over and let her lean on his shoulder. "I know that you're the one who takes care of me and cares about me the most, right?" Fang Beibei whispered in Poplar fruit's ear, "Even if I call you uncle." Poplar fruit's left hand gently patted Fang Beibei's left hand that he was holding. He smiled and said, "Of course. There's no other strange uncle as good as you in the world. No strange uncle. Only uncles." Fang Beibei smiled and corrected him. "But, you have to be honest with me." Fang Beibei turned her head and raised her chin to look at Poplar fruit. Her cheeks were blushing shyly. "When we first met, did you fall in love with me? Why are you using such genteel words?" Poplar fruit laughed in surprise. "Don't stray from the topic. Answer me honestly," Fang Beibei said angrily. At that time, Yang Guo looked at Fang Beibei's oval-shaped face, which hadn't changed much. She was still as captivating as the little girl who looked back with a smile at the lakeside of East Lake. At that time, was she unable to let go of her as she was now? Poplar fruit said honestly, "It's hard to say. Maybe. At that time, I just fell out of love." Kiki was also a month old. Poplar fruit explained, "I didn't have the heart to think about anything else." "Then why do you say maybe?" Fang Beibei was silent for a moment and asked. Poplar fruit smiled and said, "Because, I was really moved. From the moment you turned around to look at me, I felt that this girl was very beautiful. She should be the goddess of us boys. If I was in the same grade as you when I first entered university, I believe that I would definitely worship you as a goddess." Smooth talker. Fang Beibei pushed Poplar fruit and said angrily. Just now, Poplar fruit said that he didn't, which made her feel a little disappointed. "Do you still have the photos I took of you at that time?" Poplar fruit suddenly asked. "Yes, I have saved them on my computer. When I went back, I felt that you took very good photos, so I didn't delete them," Fang Beibei said. Under Poplar fruit's urging, Fang Beibei brought the computer over and opened the photos that Poplar fruit took of Fang Beibei. What surprised Poplar fruit was that Fang Beibei took a photo of his back when he turned around and left. Fang Beibei forgot about it. If Poplar fruit didn't click on the photo and the photo suddenly jumped up, they wouldn't have noticed. Poplar fruit smiled a little proudly. Fang Beibei was a little shy. She pulled Poplar fruit's mouth and didn't let him smile. "Look at these. When I took photos of you and Kiki, you were actually the center of my focus." Poplar fruit turned back and showed Fang Beibei the photos he took at that time. Then he looked at Fang Beibei and smiled. "I think, at that time, I should have liked you very much. There was a feeling that you were the whole world in my eyes." Poplar fruit seemed to be poetic. He sang under Fang Beibei's sparkling eyes. "When I see you, the flowers in the garden will lose their color. When I see you, no matter how beautiful the stars are, they can't set off your brilliance. It's just that I was too stupid at that time and didn't understand my own heart. Fortunately, I didn't really miss you. Thank God for giving me a second chance to see you." I will cherish it forever. I just saw an interesting repost on Weibo. Those who are interested can take a look at Guofeng, Xingfeng, Shu Yu Tian on Baidu Encyclopedia. This is an article in the Book of Songs. Then, there is a note, Shu refers to a male lover. Ha, okay, Poplar Fruit's knee was hit by an arrow. Chapter 664. Me too. Fang Beibei held Yang Guo's hand tightly, her eyes glistening with tears. It seemed that her emotions had turned into tears, and they were swirling in her eyes. Okay. Baby, don't cry. Poplar Fruit smiled and wiped her smooth face with his left hand, wiping away a tear from the corner of her eye. Let's talk about something happy, shall we? Okay. Fang Beibei leaned on Poplar Fruit's arm and let out a long, soft sound. How are you preparing for the competition now? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned it. Now that he mentioned it, Fang Beibei frowned. She pouted and said unhappily, it doesn't feel good. It's so annoying. Poplar Fruit comforted her, actually, you don't have to care too much about the results. Isn't this your first time participating in a competition? Just think of it as accumulating experience. Moreover, it's such a good thing to be able to travel abroad. When I was a freshman and sophomore, I could only look enviously at you guys who could fly here and there at public expense. We have to go all out in the competition. Fang Beibei felt that Poplar Fruit's idea was wrong. She retorted, if we don't want to be first, then why are we participating in the competition? I might as well go to Bali with you and watch your show. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, okay, then let's not participate in the competition. You can go to Bali with me. I'd be more than happy to. Fang Beibei punched him and said angrily, how can that be? I've been preparing for this competition for a long time. Poplar Fruit smiled and pinched Fang Beibei's left hand. He comforted her and said, I'm just kidding. I definitely support you to prove yourself. Tell me, what do you feel is not good enough? Let's think of a way together. Fang Beibei leaned back on Poplar Fruit's shoulder. She held Poplar Fruit's right hand and played with it as she said, if it's just math, I'm not afraid. You know I've always been good at math. But when it comes to English, no matter how much I study it, I just can't get it right. English? Are you going to write a thesis? Poplar Fruit thought about it. He wasn't too surprised. Previously, Poplar Fruit had learned about the competition process of the American Mathematical Modeling Competition because of Fang Beibei. He saw that the last part was to write a thesis in English. He knew that this was a very difficult task for Fang Beibei. How did you know? Fang Beibei asked in surprise. Nonsense, as your boyfriend, how can I not know about the competition you're going to participate in? Poplar Fruit smiled proudly. He thought about it and asked curiously, but aren't you guys in a team of 3? Your English isn't good. You can find someone who is good at English to partner with you. Poplar Fruit knew that although Fang Beibei had passed CET4 after his training, her actual ability was still far from being able to write a thesis. Not to mention Fang Beibei, Poplar Fruit's graduation year, even if he passed CET8 in English, writing a thesis was extremely painful. Fang Beibei pouted and said in a wronged manner, I'm a senior. Those who are good at English have already been pulled away by the seniors. I don't even have a chance. This was the disadvantage of Fang Beibei entering the competition team in her first year. Although she had performed well in several assignments, for the senior brothers and sisters of the senior grade, it was difficult for a girl without any competition experience to obtain good results in an international competition. Therefore, Fang Beibei did not become the target of the senior brothers and sisters to rope her in. Most of the boys in the competition team were nerds. In their eyes, competition results were far more attractive than a beautiful girl. Of course, Wang Di was a different story. Until now, the person who was most likely to be in the same team as Fang Beibei was only Senior Shinhong. However, although Senior Shinhong was a senior, her English level was only average. Her math level was even worse than Fang Beibei's. What was worse was that Senior Shinhong was also participating in a competition for the first time. Her experience was the same as Fang Beibei's, 0. If it weren't for this reason, Fang Beibei wouldn't have to worry about falling out. At that time, even Senior Wang Di wouldn't be willing to be in the same team as them. Wang Di was in the seeded team of Higashiyama University last year. He and 2 other seniors who were now studying abroad got the best result of Higashiyama University that year, finalist. It was called the Special Award Nomination in China. However, most people thought that he was a hitchhiker because the 2 seniors were really strong. Whether or not he was a hitchhiker, Wang Di still had some ability after all. Not only did he have competition experience, but he also participated in writing the competition thesis. This was a good supplement for Fang Beibei and Senior Shinhong. Fang Beibei told Poplar Fruit a lot about their training for more than a month. Poplar Fruit suddenly realized that Fang Beibei didn't have it easy. She joined the competition team as a freshman. It was rare in Higashiyama University, so many seniors ostracized her. However, she didn't complain to Poplar Fruit before. She had been working hard silently. You guys can't communicate with the outside world, right? Although you have 3 days of competition time. Poplar Fruit asked. When he saw Fang Beibei nodding, he said regretfully, "It's a pity. If it's possible, I can help you guys translate the Chinese thesis directly into English. I guarantee that it's better than those Native American college students. It's just not possible." Fang Beibei said with regret, "Not only the thesis, but the English version of the SPSS software is also giving me a headache. I'll take you through the software later. Let's talk about the thesis first. You guys can bring your own books, right?" Poplar Fruit asked. "Yes, you can bring your computer, and you can also go online." Fang Beibei said regretfully, "It's just that you can't contact the rest of the team. If you catch them, you won't be able to participate in the competition in the future." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "That's easy. I can help you guys write a secret manual for writing your thesis. If there are any commonly used sentences and words, I will list them all in a document. When the time comes, when you write the thesis, you can search for them accordingly. As long as someone's English is good enough to write a thesis fluently, I believe that with my secret manual, you guys will be able to write your thesis easily." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "I guarantee that this secret manual will be more useful than looking it up in a dictionary." "But, you don't know mathematics, right?" Fang Beibei asked worriedly. "Ha, baby, you have to believe me." Poplar Fruit said confidently, "Your boyfriend is a professional translator. Earlier, I didn't study law or chemistry, but didn't I still translate the chemical company's contract information? As long as you help me find enough model materials, I can help you guys summarize it." Fang Beibei sat and looked at Poplar Fruit's confident look. Her heart felt warm, as if there was a force supporting her, and she no longer felt hesitant and confused. "Uncle." Fang Beibei smiled and said, "You're so good to me." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Of course, if I'm not good to you, who am I good to?" Although it was a bit mushy, Fang Beibei felt very happy. However, at this time, she remembered that the team still had an invisible bomb to deal with. At noon, senior sister Shinhang's suggestion floated in her mind. "Uncle, can you accompany me to meet my teammates tomorrow?" Fang Beibei pulled Poplar Fruit's hand and asked softly, "I know you're busy tomorrow, so accompany me to meet them." Poplar Fruit thought for a moment. Tomorrow morning, he had to meet the teacher. At least, he would be in school for the whole day. He still had time to accompany Fang Beibei. He didn't ask for the reason, but smiled and said, "Okay. What time do you think is suitable? I'm going to meet the dean tomorrow. Then at noon, I should go to his house for lunch." do you want to come with me at noon? Poplar Fruit asked. My master's wife always wants me to bring a girlfriend to meet her, haha. Fang Beibei was a bit shy, but she didn't want to hide in school. She thought for a moment and nodded in agreement, then come and pick me up at noon. Let's say hello to my teammates and then we'll go together. 2,500 plus chapters. Thank you book friend 4919 for your encouragement. Thank you book friend, only love Ife, for your rewards. Your recognition and support is the motivation for Xiao Han to persevere and work hard to write better. P.S. Xiao Han is also a fan of Fairy Sister. In the past, when he saw the demigods and semidevils and the condor heroes, the Fairy Sister in white fluttering clothes was an existence that could turn people upside down. Now that she has washed away her childish appearance, she is even more beautiful. Speaking of which, when he wrote Duanshueching, Xiao Han thought of the Fairy Sister's appearance. However, there was no reference for her personality, so he didn't make Duanshueching the female lead. Please don't be unhappy. Chapter 665. You still know how to come back. Even though midsummer was almost over, the weather in Yangcheng was still scorching hot. The sun at around 9 o'clock was already unbearably hot and the air was filled with the smell of mud. Poplar Fruit stood in the small garden and looked at his mentor Chen Zongdai with a bitter smile. On the right, Kiki was accompanied by her mentor's wife. She was chatting with a few children and trying to play with them. Chen Zongdai was wearing a straw hat and was loosening the soil and watering his flowers. He was so busy that he didn't pay attention to Poplar Fruit. Chen Zongdai was satisfied and helpless with his proud disciple. With Poplar Fruit's superior talent, even Chen Zongdai, who was one of the top linguists and translators in the country, couldn't estimate Poplar Fruit's future achievements. Poplar Fruit's improvement was especially obvious after Chen Zongdai began to personally guide him. He went from a self-taught genius to a solid academic scholar. Moreover, when Poplar Fruit proposed his theory of translation, Chen Zongdai no longer limited Poplar Fruit's development with his own ideas. Poplar Fruit had already begun to soar. However, Chen Zongdai, who should be satisfied, was often annoyed by Poplar Fruit's unprofessional behavior. At first, Chen Zongdai felt that it was acceptable for Poplar Fruit to take up an important position in Sinda translation. After all, this was part of their field of expertise. Chen Zongdai also hoped that a large company like Sinda would give their students more practical and employment opportunities. Not only did Chen Zongdai not object to Poplar Fruit's literary translation work, but he also approved of it. As a translation scholar, if Poplar Fruit lacked practical experience, he wouldn't be able to make any progress and discoveries. However, when Poplar Fruit's progress was at its peak, he suddenly went on vacation. He stayed in the mountains of Guishan province for half a month, after the seminar. Not only that, Poplar Fruit also asked for a leave of absence from September to October. For about a month, he went abroad to be a model. Please, you're a scholar. You should stand on the podium and speak energetically, not catwalk on the runway and accept the baptism of light. However, his wife's words were very reasonable. With Poplar Fruit's qualifications, even if he doesn't become an old scholar like you, he can still do well in other industries. Now is not the era of learning. Why do you limit this child's development? Let's let him go out and he'll make progress that you can't even imagine. The modest, low-key, and polite Poplar Fruit was very liked by his wife. This made Chen Zongdai feel a little jealous. However, after his wife's enlightenment, Chen Zongdai didn't stop Poplar Fruit from doing anything other than studying. He even approved Poplar Fruit's application for a month's leave. But his heart didn't agree. When Poplar Fruit came back to visit for the first time, Chen Zongdai mocked him. Chen Zongdai loosened the soil for a while before patting his old waist and slowly standing up. Poplar Fruit hurriedly went to help him. Chen Zongdai's face relaxed a little. He looked at Poplar Fruit's nervous expression. Although he still kept a straight face, his heart was blooming with joy. This little guy, if I don't beat him, his butt will jump up. Chen Zongdai wasn't really angry. He couldn't wait to care about this proud disciple of his. How could he bear to scold him? This time, he was serious because he realized that Poplar Fruit's journey seemed to be a little too smooth. If he didn't let him come back to his senses, Chen Zongdai was worried that this child would die prematurely because of his pride. Chen Zongdai stopped before going too far. He nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, "Okay, let's go in and talk." Poplar Fruit breathed a sigh of relief and followed his teacher into his study. Outside, Kiki was playing with her new friends. Poplar Fruit wasn't too worried. In terms of learning, Chen Zongdai had a persistence that other teachers didn't have. Before they started chatting, Chen Zongdai first tested Poplar Fruit's learning situation. Now, Chen Zongdai couldn't teach Poplar Fruit too much. He could only rely on his decades of experience compared to Poplar Fruit to guide Poplar Fruit to self-study some unorthodox foreign theories. He didn't want Poplar Fruit to accept everything, but he wanted him to further improve his own theories through learning. Poplar Fruit secretly wiped away his cold sweat. Fortunately, he took some time to study during the second half of the holiday. With his efficiency that was several times higher than ordinary people, he was able to answer the teacher's questions fluently. Don't slack off in your studies. Keep working hard. Chen Zongdai didn't express his satisfaction. He only nodded slightly. Then, Poplar Fruit reported to his teacher what he had done in the Hmong village. To Chen Zongdai, who was also his teacher and father, Poplar Fruit had nothing to hide. When he heard that Poplar Fruit had a purpose for staying in the Hmong village for half a month, Chen Zongdai nodded approvingly. Chen Zongdai was surprised that not only did he not waste his time, but he was also doing something meaningful. He couldn't help but applaud Poplar Fruit in his heart. However, this didn't mean that Chen Zongdai fully approved of what Poplar Fruit had done. He frowned. Poplar Fruit, distance education isn't as simple as you think. Chen Zongdai shook his head and said. Poplar Fruit thought that his teacher was worried about the same as Meng Ping. However, after several attempts, Poplar Fruit was very confident about his plan. Although almost no one had done it before, Poplar Fruit was still confident that he could take the first step. Chen Zongdai waved his hand and interrupted Poplar Fruit's explanation. He sighed softly and said, Poplar Fruit, did you think I was referring to this when I said it wasn't simple? Poplar Fruit looked at his teacher in confusion and asked, then what is it? Chen Zongdai didn't answer directly. Instead, he talked about entrepreneurship. Now, under the promotion of the country, entrepreneurship is being promoted everywhere. Among our graduates this year, 5 of them didn't go to school or work. They went to start their own businesses. Of course, they went to open an online store. Chen Zongdai sneered and said, but entrepreneurship isn't as simple as they think it is. Although entrepreneurship is also a way out, without experience and support from the society, I dare say that among these 5 students, it's already very good if one of them succeeds. Entrepreneurship requires the right time, the right place, and the right people. Chen Zongdai said, the right time, they have it. The country supports them, and the school also has a startup fund that they can apply for. What about the right place? The trouble of opening an online store in the past has been solved by an online store. That's considered good luck. But what about the right people? I don't think they have anyone. Chen Zongdai said firmly, now, there are so many young people who are passionately diving into the entrepreneurial army. How fierce is the competition between them? Even if there are a few who stand out, maybe they have good management, or maybe they have a disruptive way of making profits. Chen Zongdai shook his head and said, but, in front of them, there are countless industry giants eyeing them covetously. If you want to disrupt them and move forward, you might be taken down by others first. Or, you might be directly acquired by others. This is no longer the golden era of entrepreneurship in the 1990s and the beginning of the new century. Just look at Tingsu, this big company. Over the years, how many promising seedlings have been swallowed up? Chapter 666. Although Chen Zongdai talked about the risks of starting a business, which seemed to have nothing to do with Poplar Fruit could still vaguely understand the meaning of his teacher's words. Teacher, are you saying that someone will stop me from doing distance education? Poplar Fruit frowned and asked. That's right. Chen Zongdai counted with his fingers and said, there's a political environment in Lidong, where there are no officials who will stop you for the time being. There's also the increasingly developing internet environment. You have all the right time and place. The only thing you lack is people. You still don't know how big of an impact your distance education will have on the current education system, right? Chen Zongdai smiled and asked. Poplar Fruit frowned and said, if it can be done well, it should be subversive. It might change the traditional education model. Chen Zongdai nodded. Because it's subversive, so they will oppose me? Poplar Fruit hesitated and asked. What do you think? Chen Zongdai asked back, if your distance education becomes a public form, and the effect you said is more vivid and interesting than traditional teachers, wouldn't this force these teachers to lose their jobs? Poplar Fruit's expression was a little unhappy. He gritted his teeth and said with a little anger, Teacher, isn't that wrong? First of all, let's not talk about whether I can affect the entire education industry. Even if it's distance education, it still needs people to support it. Without a teacher on the other side, how can education be created out of thin air? Moreover, with the elementary school level we're facing now, we need people to follow closely and give different guidance to each child's situation. A simple cold machine can't do that. Why would they feel threatened? Poplar Fruit's mouth was like a machine gun, spewing out his inner anger. In addition, I'm doing distance education not to subvert anyone. I just want to help those kids who can't go to school in the mountainous areas. They are not willing to pay a little more, and no one is willing to teach children in such a difficult environment. I just thought of a way for the children to be able to study. What right do they have to criticize us? After calming down, Poplar Fruit looked at Chen Zongdai apologetically and said, I'm sorry, teacher. I didn't mean it to you. I know you're doing this for my own good. Actually, Poplar Fruit had been suppressing these emotions in his heart for a long time. Meng Ping's doubts and Big Brother He's advice made him feel that there were actually so many people opposing him when he wanted to do a good deed. This was only the beginning. Poplar Fruit was not stupid. He could guess that if he wanted to promote this model, he would encounter a lot of obstacles. This sullen feeling accompanied Poplar Fruit all the way back to Yangcheng from Gui Mountain. It was only until he met his teacher, who was like a talent scout to him, that he could vent his frustrations. It's fine. Chen Zongdai waved his hand. He felt strangely proud in his heart. Poplar Fruit did not know that his teacher, who was almost 60 years old, was actually muttering in his heart, hee, kid, you also have times when you're anxious? Normally, Poplar Fruit seemed to be calm and collected about everything. People could not help but mistake him for an old man and not a young man in his early 20s. Young people should act like young people. They should have the drive to not be afraid of losing. They should have the courage to fight until their heads bled. I'm just telling you the truth. Chen Zongdai laughed and said, there will always be some stubborn old people who can't see through the old traditions, and there will always be some interest groups who want to maintain their high and mighty position. This is a situation that all reformers will encounter. If we shrink back in the face of obstacles, then there won't be a country like ours, and there won't be an open society like ours. Chen Zongdai said seriously, if you want to walk ahead of others and make an outstanding career, you can't do it without a tenacious spirit. Poplar Fruit listened very seriously. He said gratefully, thank you, teacher. With your support, I will persevere. No, I don't support you. Chen Zongdai gave Poplar Fruit a huge reversal. He shook his head and said, I just don't support you. Our school and the university will not support you. Poplar Fruit was a little stunned, but he thought of the key point. Chen Zongdai was the dean of the outer courtyard. He represented the school, and the school represented Higashiyama University. If the Higashiyama University supported him with great fanfare, it would put the school on the opposite side of the entire education system. Even if Chen Zongdai was a person of virtue and prestige, it would not be able to offset this negative impact. Seeing Poplar Fruit's ugly face gradually become better and his eyes become clear again, Chen Zongdai nodded secretly. He was very pleased that Poplar Fruit could see the problem from the big picture. I won't give you any obvious resources. Even before you achieve something and gain the momentum, the school will not give you any rewards or publicity for what you have done, Chen Zongdai said. These are all empty promises. We just want to do one thing well, and that is to let the children in the mountains be able to go to school. Poplar Fruit said sincerely. The role of honor is not as simple as you think. Chen Zongdai shook his head, but he did not say much. Poplar Fruit was still not involved in such a high-level struggle. Then can I still apply for a public welfare club? Even the school won't let me? Poplar Fruit frowned and asked. He needed the support of other students. His time and power were limited. Student clubs are managed by students. It has nothing to do with the school. Chen Zongdai blinked and said, of course, the teacher in charge of the Student Activities Management Center may prefer a public welfare club like yours. In the past 2 years, because voluntary activities have been written into the policy, the Management Center has a lot of resources to support you. This is the responsibility of the school committee, and it has nothing to do with the school. Poplar Fruit understood. The teacher was not completely ignoring him. He was still giving him advice. However, in order to separate the school, he could not directly come forward. Teacher, thank you. Poplar Fruit said seriously, I believe that one day, I will let you accept us openly. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's go out. Chen Zongdai waved his hand and changed the topic. You haven't come for so long, and you didn't even give me a call. Your teacher's wife has been talking about you every day. Poplar Fruit said embarrassedly, that was my negligence. I will live near the school in the future. When I have time, I will often come to visit teacher's wife. Pushing open the door of the study, they saw teacher's wife coming out of the kitchen with a plate of food. She smiled and said, you two are finally willing to come out. Wash your hands and get ready to eat. Chapter 667. Looking at the teacher's wife, Poplar Fruit made an "aya" sound, patted his head, and said, I forgot. Forgot what? What are you two talking about? The teacher's wife looked suspiciously at the old man and asked. Chen Zongdai said gloomily, forgot what? I don't know. Poplar Fruit, what are you talking to yourself about? Today I wanted to bring someone to meet teacher and teacher's wife, but I forgot to tell teacher's wife this morning that I had to cook for one more person. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said apologetically. The result should be that he forgot after being scolded by the teacher. Of course, Poplar Fruit didn't dare to say that. You little brat, you earned so much money for nothing. There's no food anywhere, but you brought someone here to freeload food. Unethical. Chen Zongdai shook his head and said with disdain. Of course, Chen Zongdai was only joking with Poplar Fruit. Today, his favorite disciple came to visit, so he was happy in his heart. Old man, don't talk so much. The teacher's wife scolded him. Women's minds are more sensitive, unlike Chen Zongdai who doesn't care about anything. The teacher's wife vaguely guessed the answer. She looked at Poplar Fruit and asked with anticipation, Poplar Fruit, the person you want to bring, is your girlfriend? I say, don't talk about it every day. How can bringing someone here be your girlfriend? Does Poplar Fruit still want to have female classmates? Chen Zongdai waved his hand and said with disdain. It's my girlfriend. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. It's just that teacher's wife talks about it every day. Today, I thought about it, so I brought her here to meet teacher's wife. When the affirmative sentence came out, Poplar Fruit saw the teacher's wife raise her head. First, she looked at Chen Zongdai proudly, as if to say, see, I was right. Then, she looked at Poplar Fruit with joy and said, good, good. Quickly bring her here. Without waiting for Poplar Fruit to say anything, she wiped her hands on her apron and said excitedly, I'll cook some rice now. And, I'll cook 2 more dishes. Poplar Fruit, where is your girlfriend from? Is there anything she likes to eat? Does she eat spicy? Looking at the teacher's wife's anxious expression, it was as if she was waiting for her child's girlfriend to visit for the first time. She asked all sorts of questions, as if she was afraid that she wouldn't be a good host. However, the teacher's wife did treat Poplar Fruit as her own junior, especially the innocent and cute Kiki. The teacher's wife doted on her more than her own grandson. She's from Guangzhou. Just cook according to our tastes. Teacher's wife, there's no need to order more dishes. Let's just have a simple meal and meet everyone. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Hurry up and pick her up. Did you drive here? If you didn't drive, old man, take out the car keys. The teacher's wife started to order her old man around. Poplar Fruit quickly shook his hand and smiled, no need, she's at school. She's also from Higashiyama University. When they came out, Poplar Fruit even went to visit Kiki. Kiki was having fun playing hopscotch with 2 guys and a lady. She only responded to Poplar Fruit's call. Ever since Kiki returned to Guangzhou, she had been missing her friends in the Hmong village. Since it was rare for them to play together, Poplar Fruit did not disturb her and went to look for Fang Bebe alone. Is she still in the 215 dorm? Poplar Fruit asked Fang Bebe on WeChat as he walked. WeChat was an instant messaging app that only became popular this year. Poplar Fruit only started using it under Fang Bebe's influence. He felt that it was fun, even though it overlapped with Cuckoo. It had a simple interface and a private circle of friends. It was a different experience from Weibo and Cuckoo. When it was close to noon, Fang Bebe's enthusiasm in the discussion had greatly decreased. She was playing with her phone absent-mindedly. Although Shenhong was in the way, Wang Di still paid attention to Fang Bebe. When he saw Fang Bebe's expression, he pretended to stretch his body and said loudly, I'm exhausted. We've been discussing for 3 hours. Why don't we take a break? What do the 2 beauties want to drink? It's my treat. It's rare to see you being so generous. Shenhong teased with a smile. But forget it. It's almost noon and we're still drinking. We won't be able to eat later. Then let's go eat. Wang Di smiled. I heard that a new fast food restaurant opened at Little North Gate. Why don't we go and try it? He was asking Shenhong, but his eyes kept drifting towards Fang Bebe. Ding dong. Fang Bebe's phone rang. She was instantly energized. Baby, I'm coming to pick you up. Are you still in the 215 dorm? Fang Bebe smiled sweetly when she saw the message. She replied quickly and kept looking at her phone with a bright smile on her face. Shenhong subconsciously glanced at Fang Bebe. She was also a woman. How could she not know what Fang Bebe's expression meant? She muttered in her heart, this child is hopeless. Wang Di fell into an awkward situation. Fang Bebe wasn't paying attention to his suggestion, but Shenhong's train of thought was interrupted by Fang Bebe. As a result, he was ignored. Helpless, Wang Di could only brace himself and ask again. Shenhong turned her head and looked at Wang Di. She chuckled and asked, What, Wang Di, are you treating me alone? Isn't there still Bebe? Wang Di smiled awkwardly. Her. Shenhong turned her head and looked at Fang Beibei, who was still immersed in her own world. She smiled and said, "You don't need to worry about her. She already has an appointment." Actually, when Wang Di was late in the morning, Fang Beibei told Shenhong in advance that her boyfriend would come over at noon. "She has an appointment?" Wang Di's jaw almost dropped. He remembered that Fang Beibei didn't have a boyfriend. Could it be that some bastard beat him to it? Ding dong. Another new message notification sounded. Fang Beibei opened it. She smiled so widely that her big eyes curved into beautiful crescents. Her finger tapped twice on the screen, then pressed the phone to her mouth and said softly, "We are all in the activity room. Come over." "Here, I'm coming." Shenhong nudged Wang Di. Wang Di's heart was in turmoil. "Who is it? Who is it? I just started to chase after him." Fang Beibei pushed her chair away and stood up. She was already at the door of the activity room. Looking at her, Wang Di knew that he had no chance. However, he was still unwilling to give up. Wang Di's eyes were burning with jealousy as he stared at the door. He really wanted to know who it was that was able to cut off the handsome and talented Wang Di. Interesting. Shenhong looked at Fang Beibei with a smile on her face. She muttered in her heart, "Beibei is so happy. What kind of person are you?" Chapter 668. Poplar Fruit had never been to dormitory 215 before. However, he had studied in this school for 4 years after all. No matter what, he knew that these dormitory buildings had similar structures. After registering at the front door, Poplar Fruit went around the flower beds and the bicycle track on the elevated level and went to the student activity room at the back. To be honest, the student activity room was just a converted storage room. Not only was the ventilation poor, but there was also no air conditioning installed. In summer, it was as stuffy as a big steamer. If the door was not open, there was no way to walk around inside. However, there were not many places for students to hold meetings and do some simple activities. The students were not too picky either. When school reopened, the various clubs would gather together to organize activities, hold meetings, and write plans. These activity rooms would be in short supply. After turning a corner, Poplar Fruit saw Fang Beibei standing at the door and looking around. Before he got close, he waved and called out, "Baby." "Uncle." Fang Beibei's eyes lit up. She happily welcomed him and held Poplar Fruit's hand with a smile. She asked, "Why are you only here now?" "I was caught by the teacher and scolded. It took some time." Poplar Fruit shook his head and smiled bitterly. Fang Beibei looked at him worriedly. She asked, "Why did he scold you?" "He said that I don't do my job properly. I don't study properly and write my thesis. All I think about is going out every day. I'm just like Kiki." Poplar Fruit laughed heartily. He dragged Kiki down with him. "Don't worry, it's nothing. The teacher did it for my own good." Fang Beibei ran out and stood outside to talk to Poplar Fruit. She was so immersed in the world of the two of them that she forgot about the others. Shenhong and Wang Di, who were in the activity room, felt a little strange and walked out to take a look. Shenhong followed behind Wang Di. Once she walked out, she saw a very tall boy standing there. His pair of long legs looked as good as those Korean celebrities. Fang Beibei was holding his hand, looking up at him with a smile. Wang Di looked as if he had just swallowed a fly, but Shenhong's expression was also very strange. Shenhong had already seen Poplar Fruit's photos. After she went back yesterday, she was very curious and looked through Poplar Fruit's previous Weibo. She found that the content of this Weibo was almost all about his daughter. There were only a few photos of Poplar Fruit, but when she took photos with her daughter, Shenhong's attention was all on his daughter. Now that she saw the real person, Shenhong realized that her previous impressions were all wrong. So the real person is actually very handsome. Poplar Fruit was a sunny boy. The lines on his face were not as delicate as those of flowery men, but the strong square lines were more in line with the Chinese aesthetic standards. Moreover, when he smiled, he always gave people a dazzling feeling. He's not that old either. In the photos on his Weibo, because of Kiki, Poplar Fruit looked like an old man in his early 30s. His messy and ungroomed hairstyle did not reflect the spirit of the protagonist. Instead, it made him look like he had been through a lot. Now that he was not burdened by a child, Poplar Fruit looked like they were the same age. Actually, they were around the same age. Not only that, but Poplar Fruit also had a maturity that made the hearts of young girls flutter, unlike Wang Di beside her. Wang Di's maturity was given to him by his life experience. He did not appear overly pretentious, and he even gave the girls around him a sense of security that was as solid as a rock. Was he really a single father of a child? Why did it feel like it was impossible? He was the best lover in the eyes of all the young girls who yearned for love. How could he be married? Shenhong looked at Poplar Fruit with a complicated expression. She shivered and realized that she was unconsciously attracted to Poplar Fruit. Looking at how he was holding hands with Fang Beibei, how they looked at each other with eyes full of love, and how Fang Beibei unconsciously began to lean on him, it seemed that Poplar Fruit was her support. Shenhong began to understand why Fang Beibei would choose a single father to be her boyfriend. But, will this kind of love last? Shenhong asked herself. She felt that if she were in his shoes, it would be very difficult for her to accept the fact that she had become a stepmother. Even if this man was very good, when Shenhong and Wang Di walked out, Poplar Fruit noticed them. He gently patted Fang Beibei's hand and said with a smile, "It seems that your senior brothers and sisters have come out. Can you introduce them to me?" Fang Beibei turned her head and looked. Her face suddenly turned red. Her hand in Poplar Fruit's palm moved and she subconsciously wanted to pull it out. Fang Beibei had never shown affection in front of others before. Holding hands with her boyfriend so intimately, she didn't want to be separated for a moment in private. But in front of others, Fang Beibei, who was a little shy, couldn't stand the ambiguous gaze of her senior sisters. However, she also understood that pulling it out would only make it more conspicuous. So, Fang Beibei struggled in her heart and still didn't pull it out. She pulled Poplar Fruit and walked toward Shenhong and the others. Fang Beibei was actually a generous girl. After she suppressed some of the shyness in her heart, she calmly introduced Poplar Fruit to Shenhong and the others. "Senior sister Shenhong, senior brother Wang Di, this is my boyfriend. His name is Poplar Fruit, and the fruit is the apple. Poplar Fruit, this is senior sister Shenhong, and this is senior brother Wang Di. They are all my senior brothers and sisters. Hello." Poplar Fruit smiled and let go of Fang Beibei's hand. He raised his right hand and shook it gently. "Nice to meet you." He didn't reach out his hand to shake, mainly because he felt that since they were all students, he shouldn't act too socialized. Wang Di's face was conflicted. He had basically given up. Standing next to Poplar Fruit, he suddenly felt like an ugly duckling. He wasn't as tall as him, and he wasn't as handsome as him. It was as if he was useless. No, I should be smarter than him. Wang Di still had a little struggle in his heart. Yes, handsome men are generally not smart. However, Shenhong's question made Wang Di's final struggle meaningless. Shenhong looked at Poplar Fruit curiously and asked, "Poplar Fruit, should I call you senior brother Poplar Fruit? I heard that you are going to graduate school." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Yes, I will be in my first year of graduate school in September. You guys can also call me senior brother. My undergraduate degree is 06. Beibei told me before, so you guys should be at 09, right?" In front of others, Poplar Fruit still called Fang Bebe, Bebe, just like how Fang Bebe called him, Poplar Fruit. They had already discussed that they would call each other by their nicknames in private. They couldn't show off their love too much. Poplar Fruit didn't show off too much. He only told them some simple information about himself. He didn't mention anything about being the dean's disciple, and so on. Poplar Fruit pursued the principle of being a low-key person. Some honors should be kept in the heart. There was no need to show off to others. Chapter 669. Shenhong felt especially close when talking to Poplar Fruit. Perhaps this was Poplar Fruit's unique charisma. Charisma was a very mysterious thing. Poplar Fruit himself did not feel it. He was usually very humble and courteous when dealing with people, but being humble and courteous could not completely become a unique charisma. Poplar Fruit also had a gentle and scholarly temperament. He was very talented, but he would not show off. He was very reserved and very ordinary. If one did not learn to read auras, it would be difficult to tell at a glance. However, after chatting with him for a long time, this temperament would slowly infect the person talking to him. It was probably because he cultivated Tai Chi, the Heart Sutra that contained yin and yang, hardness and softness, and odd coupling, and was calm and smooth. It had ground away the impetuousness in his heart, and the beauty of strength and the depth of knowledge were needed together. This allowed Poplar Fruit to be neither arrogant nor rash. He was impartial and impartial. Even his tone of voice was very infectious. All of these combined created Poplar Fruit's unique charisma. However, in Wang Di's view, all of this was terrible. Poplar Fruit's academic qualifications were actually higher than his. He was even a senior. Why was he faintly better than him in every aspect? Of course, Wang Di would not admit that this was not faintly at all. He was completely defeated. No, it seemed that he still had a little bit of an advantage. Wang Di, who had been silent all this time, suddenly asked, "Senior, you are level 06. Why did you only start your graduate school this year?" Shenhong was stunned. She had not considered this question. Poplar Fruit smiled generously and said, "After I graduated 10 years ago, I did not think of going to graduate school. My family's financial situation was not very good, so I went to work first. Now that I have enough money for tuition, I feel that I still need to go back to school to improve myself, so I came back." Senior, is academic qualifications very important in society now? Shenhong, who would also enter the turning point of her senior year in September, asked curiously. She was different from Wang Di. Wang Di had already been recommended for graduate school, but she still had no news. Shenhong was hesitating whether to go abroad to study or go straight to work. That's not the case. A bachelor's degree is enough. Moreover, for foreign companies, a higher degree is sometimes a burden. Yang Guo explained with her own experience, "Of course, if you have the time, energy, and opportunity, it's not a bad idea to study for another 2 years. It's not just a diploma, it's also an improvement for you. Senior brother, aren't you 25 or 26 years old now?" Wang Di forcibly changed the topic again. "It seems that Bebe is only 19 years old, right?" Wang Di's words made Shenhong and Fang Bebe frown, especially Fang Bebe. Her displeasure was written all over her face. Poplar Fruit could also tell that this young man wasn't very satisfied with his appearance. However, he still smiled calmly and said, "Not really. I started school early, and I'm only 24 years old now." He was not even 24 years old yet, so Poplar Fruit did not care about the remaining months. "Senior brother, I heard from Bebe that you're a great translator. I heard that translating is very profitable." Shenhong glared at Wang Di, wanting to help Poplar Fruit out. "There's no such thing as a great translator. He's just a translator. Fang Beibei laughed. Because of Shenhong's words, Fang Beibei was not angry. Poplar Fruit said with some embarrassment, Beibei is right. I'm just a translator for a living. In fact, translating is not as glamorous as everyone thinks. I also stay at home reading materials and typing on the computer. Poplar Fruit avoided the topic of how much he earned. He felt that they were all students, so there was no need to talk about money. I think I'm very curious. Shenhong smiled and ran to Fang Beibei's side. She pulled Fang Beibei's hand and said, Senior brother, you're studying English, and Beibei, you're studying mathematics. These two subjects are not related at all. What do you two usually talk about? Between lovers, can only talk about English and mathematics? Fang Beibei let go of Poplar Fruit's hand and tickled Shenhong's waist. The two of them laughed and played together. I'm also studying mathematics. I can talk about things like isometric scales and regression analysis. However, every time I talk about mathematics with Beibei, I feel that I'm not good. Beibei's mathematics is really good. I have to work harder. I can't be left too far behind by her. Poplar Fruit said. Shenhong and Wang Di both thought that Poplar Fruit was just saying a few words. Only Fang Beibei knew that Poplar Fruit was really diligent in his studies. Although mathematics was one of his least favorite subjects, Poplar Fruit still forced himself to read those mathematics books. It's all for me. Although Poplar Fruit's results were terrible, Fang Beibei was still very touched. She also said, Poplar Fruit's English is really good. He taught me for half a semester. Otherwise, I wouldn't have passed CET 4. Looking at Fang Beibei and Poplar Fruit's attitude, Wang Di's expression changed. Finally, he sighed softly and let it go. After all, college students were still relatively naive. They didn't have the courage to fight over a girl. Of course, the most important thing was that Poplar Fruit gave him a feeling that he couldn't surpass him. This man was too outstanding. Poplar Fruit said that he will help us organize the secret book for writing essays. This way, the most troublesome English essay will be solved. Fang Beibei said happily to Shenhong. Actually, it's like this. Poplar Fruit was a little embarrassed to say that it was a secret book. He explained, I will organize a document. In it, there will be Chinese and English versions of words and sentences that you might use when writing essays. It's a little bit like the key sentence patterns in CET 4 and CET 6 essays. Wang Di still didn't quite believe it, but Shenhong was very happy. She exclaimed, Really? That's great. Those who had taken an English essay exam knew how important sentence patterns were. This was based on the fact that CET 4 and CET 6 essays were more flexible. Writing essays was so rigid and focused so much on formatting. If there were some sentence patterns that could be used, it would definitely be very helpful. Then our team has a lot of hope. Shenhong pulled Fang Beibei and jumped happily. Shenhong even went up to Wang Di, who looked a little depressed and gloomy. She patted him on the shoulder and whispered, Hey! Let me tell you, you can't bring your personal emotions into the competition. With you and Beibei, and me, we must win a big prize before graduation this year. Don't you want to prove yourself? Who knows if that secret book will be useful? Wang Di was actually a little moved. He had won an award last year, but many people said that he was riding on someone's coattails. Wang Di also wanted to prove himself, but when the words came to his mouth, he was reluctant to admit it. Stop pretending here. Who doesn't know that you're a Casanova? How can this affect you? Shenhong gave him a push and laughed softly. Chapter 670. I feel like Senior Shenhong is the captain. Poplar Fruit turned around and smiled at Fang Beibei. They were now heading towards Chen Zongdai's courtyard. Fang Beibei was not as shy as before since there was no one around. She held on to Poplar Fruit's hand and the two walked closely together. In order to accommodate Fang Beibei, Poplar Fruit, who had long legs, deliberately reduced his stride length. Senior sister Shenhong is very powerful. She used to be a club president and won a first-class scholarship, Fang Beibei nodded and said. Although the first-class scholarship was not as good as the national scholarship that Fang Beibei had already booked, it was not something that anyone could get. Shenhong was able to juggle her club work and her studies at the same time. She was really good in both character and academics. There was a misunderstanding here that had to be explained. Most of the people who could participate in the international competition had received a lot of scholarships. However, not everyone was like that. For example, Wang Di was very talented in mathematics and was one of the best in the competition team. However, he did not receive many scholarships. At most, he received a second-class scholarship after winning the international competition last year. This was because he was biased in his subjects. He scored more than 90 marks in his professional courses, but his public courses were a mess. There was a semester where he even failed Maja's class. The scholarship evaluation was based on the results of each subject and their usual performance. There was nothing that could be done if they only had good grades in their professional courses. Perhaps it was because Shenhong used to be a club leader, she was very good at manipulating Wang Di. Poplar Fruit noticed that Wang Di was not in a good mood, but he was pulled back by Shenhong. Later on, Wang Di said that he would provide Poplar Fruit with his collection of model theses from past competitions. These were the things that he had collected and accumulated over the years. Fang Beibei walked 2 steps faster and stood in front of Poplar Fruit. She raised her head and asked, "Uncle, do you think we should buy some gifts?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "No need." "Why, are you nervous? Isn't it necessary to meet the elders?" Fang Beibei stomped her feet and looked at Poplar Fruit. She pouted and turned to hug Poplar Fruit's arm. "I'm a little nervous. It's not like we're meeting the parents." "Why are you so nervous?" Poplar Fruit patted Fang Beibei's soft hands. He could feel the sweat on her palms and comforted her, "It's just a simple meal, the teacher won't mind. Besides, I brought some local specialties that I bought during my trip this morning, so I don't have to bring anything else." In fact, it was very close. It was only a few minutes' walk. Poplar Fruit and the others arrived. Squeezing Fang Beibei's little hand, Poplar Fruit prepared to go up and press the doorbell. However, at this moment, Fang Beibei pulled her hand back. She shyly whispered to Poplar Fruit, "Be careful in front of the teacher." Poplar Fruit couldn't help laughing. She wasn't a high school teacher. However, he didn't give his girlfriend any psychological pressure. He smiled at Fang Beibei with relief and then pressed the doorbell. The one who opened the door was the teacher's eldest grandson. When he heard the doorbell ring, he hurriedly ran over. He only wore one shoe, as if he was worried that someone would snatch it from him. There were a few other children following behind him, and Chi-Chi was among them as well. "It's Papa." Kiki waved her little hands excitedly and gestured to her friends, "This is my Papa, and this is Sister Beibei." "Hello, Sister Beibei." In the morning, the children had greeted Poplar Fruit. They laughed and went around to greet Fang Beibei. Poplar Fruit raised his head and saw the teacher appear at the door of the house. However, before Chen Zongdai could wave his hand, he was knocked aside. An old lady with a pot lid came out excitedly. She waved the pot lid and shouted to Poplar Fruit, "Poplar Fruit, quickly bring your girlfriend over to see your teacher's wife." All right, Master's wife's enthusiasm really made people blush with shame. Even Master was almost pushed against the door by her. However, the appearance of his teacher's wife could be said to have eased the atmosphere. Poplar Fruit was just worried that with his teacher's dull temperament, the scene when he met Fang Beibei would be very depressing. "This is my girlfriend. Her name is Fang Beibei. She's from the School of Mathematics." Poplar Fruit brought Fang Beibei into the house and introduced her to the two elders with a smile. Then, Poplar Fruit introduced his teacher and teacher's wife to Fang Beibei. In fact, there was no need to say much. Fang Beibei had asked several times last night. Fang Beibei politely bowed and greeted the two elders. After she entered the door, her mischievous personality was restrained. In a second, she became a lady of a respectable family. Her words were also soft and gentle. Of course, this could not be said to be pretentious. It was human nature to want to appear better in front of the elders. Good. Good. Quite a beautiful young lady. Chen Zongdai was still acting cold, and his teacher's wife praised with a smile. Fang Beibei gave her a good first impression. She was good-looking and polite. She was not like the other students of her old man. When they came in, it seemed like they did not dare to speak. "Isn't it the holidays now? Why didn't you go home?" The teacher's wife was not in a hurry to go back and bring out the food. She smiled and asked. Poplar Fruit looked at Fang Beibei. If Fang Beibei was too nervous to answer, he would help her. However, Fang Beibei still smiled and said, "This year, I have to participate in a competition with my teacher, so I came back early for training. It's the mathematical modeling competition for university students in the United States." Beibei was selected in her first year. Poplar Fruit added. He also wanted to give his girlfriend some points. "Oh. Your teacher's surname is Zhang. I remember that Professor Zhang leads the team every year." Chen Zongdai asked. At his level, he could basically name all the famous people in the school. Yes. Fang Beibei nodded and said, "But sometimes, it's teacher Shi who teaches." "Well, old Zhang is old." Chen Zongdai nodded and said, "Little Shi is also not bad. He has made a lot of achievements in recent years." "Okay." The teacher's wife patted Chen Zongdai and smiled, "Let's have a good chat. Don't talk about the school all day." Chen Zongdai and Poplar Fruit were then sent to the kitchen by the teacher's wife to bring out the food and fill the rice. The teacher's wife pulled Fang Beibei and chatted very intimately. The more they chatted, the better the teacher's wife's impression of Fang Beibei. The old woman had decades of experience. What kind of people had she not seen before? Even if Fang Beibei was still a little nervous, the teacher's wife could see through the appearance. She could see the kind and pure side of Fang Beibei. From the bottom of her heart, she liked Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei. The two of them were a golden boy and a jade girl. They were both so smart. Therefore, at the lunch table, a scene like this appeared. "Come, Beibei, eat more." The teacher's wife stretched out her chopsticks and put a piece of red braised pork that her husband liked into Fang Beibei's bowl. Chen Zongdai was quite sullen when he saw this. Of course, there were also the four children who were chattering and causing trouble. Today's lunch was joyous and harmonious, and Fang Beibei also laughed easily and naturally. Chapter 671. Poplar Fruit was very busy. When he came back, he found that he couldn't stay at home for the whole day. If he wasn't going to visit someone, he was going to have a meal with that person. If not, he had to run around to prepare for his long-distance education. It wasn't that Poplar Fruit wanted to suck up to others. Take Uncle Jean for example. Even though he was already the deputy director of the education department, Poplar Fruit still got along with him like an old friend. They talked about basketball, life, and the books that they both liked to read. Even if he was the deputy director, Poplar Fruit wouldn't change his attitude. Besides, the deputy director and Poplar Fruit didn't have any intersection of interests. Poplar Fruit didn't need to ask for anything from him. Therefore, Yang Guo was happy despite being busy. Hu told him to run around outside for a month and a half, but he only had half a month to deal with his personal matters in Yangcheng. Luckily, Fang Bebe didn't complain because Poplar Fruit was busy. The two were still very rational when it came to love and work. During the day, they were busy with their own things like a young married couple going to work. At night, when they came back to their little nest, the two would sit together to study and snuggle up to talk. It could be considered warm and sweet. The only unsettling factor was Kiki. Even though Poplar Fruit said that he didn't forget about his daughter because he had a girlfriend, Kiki still vaguely felt a little threatened. She started to pester her father all day long, asking him to hug her and let her ride on his neck to play with. She hugged her father's head like an octopus. Last night, when they went for a walk after dinner, Kiki, who didn't like to be held by adults, even squeezed between Poplar Fruit and Bebe. She pulled her father's hand away from Bebe's and squeezed herself in between them. She didn't want to be held by her father, but she also didn't want to only be held by her father or sister Bebe. Either way, she had to squeeze between the two of them. Poplar Fruit and Fang Bebe looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They could only listen to Kiki. I think Kiki is jealous. Poplar Fruit muttered to Fang Bebe. Jealous of you or jealous of me? Fang Bebe mischievously asked, why do I feel that Kiki is closer to me? No, I'm her real father. Poplar Fruit anxiously declared. Then tell me, how much has Kiki kissed you these days? Or did you kiss me more? Fang Bebe asked proudly. Poplar Fruit was a little listless. He said softly, you have a lot. There was no other way. Although Poplar Fruit had a lot of intimate interactions with Kiki, he was a man after all. Many times, he wasn't as meticulous as Fang Bebe. Poplar Fruit often saw Fang Bebe and Kiki playing happily like sisters. Under Fang Bebe's guidance, Kiki also liked to use the Western method of kissing to express her love. Although Poplar Fruit also benefited a little, it was far less than Fang Bebe. I'm her real father. Poplar Fruit was deeply resentful, especially when he remembered that Kiki's first kiss was also given to Fang Bebe. He never stopped thinking about it. Fat Dragon sent good news from the mountain. The Hmong village was finally connected to the internet. The speed of the construction was faster than the speed of the cable. If the school was not fully repaired, Fat Dragon and the rest would have moved their computers to the school to give it a try. The progress of the construction on the mountain was getting faster and faster. Poplar Fruit could not be a hindrance. In the past few days, Poplar Fruit went to the school's student affairs office a few times, wanting to borrow their classroom. However, he returned empty-handed every time. This was because Poplar Fruit did not have an official identity. Moreover, the classroom could only be applied for by clubs. Without Chin Zongdai's help, Poplar Fruit was not qualified to apply at the moment. The only thing Poplar Fruit could do at the moment was to rent the one-bedroom apartment downstairs that happened to be available for rent. Renting alone could not solve the long-term problem. After all, the 6 grades had to be separated, so there would be 6 rooms. Yang Guo wanted to rent a house. On one hand, he wanted to settle down the equipment he bought and connect with the Hmong village for the final test. On the other hand, Yang Guo also wanted to give himself a place to practice Miaodao. He was a little depressed about this. He thought that he could find a place for him to practice his swordsmanship in such a big school. In the end, there was no such place. In the morning, too many old men and women occupied Higashiyama University. Even if Poplar Fruit shamelessly mixed in with a group of old ladies to practice his Miaodao, he could not get past the guards with his 2 big swords. There was no other way. His 2 Miaodao were half the height of a person. Even if they were not unsheathed, they looked like powerful weapons. Decorating a room was also a laborious job. Poplar Fruit wanted an empty room, so he basically emptied the original furniture for the landlord. A simple table, chair, and a blackboard for lectures were left in the living room. The remaining large space needed to be vacated for Poplar Fruit to practice his swordsmanship. Of course, the bedroom became a study and a living room. There was a sofa for resting and a coffee table for making tea or even eating takeout. Poplar Fruit planned to keep the bedroom as a backup. If necessary, it could be transformed into a classroom. Song Jiwen's friend was very helpful. He bought all the miscellaneous equipment that Poplar Fruit ordered. Someone even delivered it to his door and even helped to install it. Knock knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Kiki and Jin Zixian ran over, but she still could not reach the door lock. Poplar Fruit took the manual and walked over. When he opened the door, he saw Fang Bebe standing at the door with 2 plastic bags in her hands. "Baby, why are you back?" Poplar Fruit laughed. "Are you still part-time delivery?" Fang Bebe had things in both hands. She laughed and kicked Poplar Fruit. "You're the delivery guy. I brought you delicious food out of kindness. You don't want it, do you?" "No, no." Poplar Fruit quickly threw away the manual and took the 2 bags. He laughed. "I'm saying that you didn't take a break at noon. It's too tiring to come back in such a hot day." "It's okay. I just came back to see if you're done." Fang Bebe excitedly came in and looked at the cameras and cables that Poplar Fruit was still installing. "Sister Bebe." Kiki jumped around Fang Bebe, attracting her attention. "Sister's little fairy, what's wrong?" Fang Bebe smiled and hugged Kiki, kissed her and asked. "Papa doesn't give Jin Zixian food. Jin Zixian is so pitiful." Kiki pointed at Jin Zixian and complained loudly, not caring that her father was listening. Jin Zixian also wagged its tail and looked up. Its small eyes looked very pitiful, as if it was complaining about its male owner's harshness. Poplar Fruit saw Fang Bebe looking over. He helplessly waved his hand and said, "It's not my fault. Who told it to be disobedient and run around begging? It almost knocked the camera off." Fang Bebe smiled. She pushed Poplar Fruit and advised, "Well, Jin Zixian is not sensible. Do you think it can understand your words like Kiki? Just teach it a lesson." In fact, he didn't let it starve for long. However, since Fang Bebe and Kiki said so, Poplar Fruit had to give up on Jin Zixian's punishment. It seemed that his position was a bit worrying. Chapter 672. It was time to welcome the new students. Higashiyama University was bustling with people and colorful flags. Poplar Fruit sighed as he walked around the campus. The last time he entered the university as a new student was 6 years ago. At that time, although his parents wanted to send him to school, they gave up because they were poor financially. Poplar Fruit still remembered how excited he was when he got off the bus with his luggage and walked through the unfamiliar Yangqing subway to arrive at Higashiyama University. However, Poplar Fruit arrived early and didn't make it in time to welcome the new students. He carried his luggage to the dormitory alone and was as tired as a dog. Now, 6 years later, Poplar Fruit entered the university as a new student again. The situation was completely different. Although his parents still didn't come, Lin Jia had consumed all their energy. Without the burden of luggage, he didn't feel lost because of the unfamiliar campus, and he didn't feel as excited as when he first stepped into this paradise. Poplar Fruit walked on the campus road with the notice and student ID in his pocket. However, he didn't feel like a new student at all. He was like an outsider looking at the bustling crowd around him. What a pity. Poplar Fruit shook his head regretfully. Fang Bebe didn't come with him. Even Kiki was taken away by her. He was alone 6 years ago and 6 years later. In Fang Bebe's words, today's glory belonged to Poplar Fruit. He should experience it himself. Poplar Fruit saw a thin and short girl dragging a big suitcase with a big quilt bag on the side of the road. She had to take 2 breaths after taking 2 steps. Why aren't there any volunteers helping her? Poplar Fruit was a little confused. Did they miss it? Poplar Fruit shrugged when he saw the girl almost fall down. He muttered, well, she can't be strong for nothing, right? Do you need help? Poplar Fruit walked over and asked with a smile. Although it was a question, Poplar Fruit didn't expect her to answer. He directly took the suitcase from her hand. Thank you, thank you. The girl was startled by Poplar Fruit, but when she came back to her senses, she bowed to Poplar Fruit to express her gratitude. You don't have to. I'll take it for you. Which academy are you from? Why are you alone? Poplar Fruit pressed down on the blanket that the girl was about to carry over and lifted it up easily. Then, he dragged the box forward and asked curiously. It's from the School of Mathematics. I'm doing my master's this year. I'm embarrassed to ask my family to send me. The girl was very nervous at first, but when she saw that Poplar Fruit was indeed able to handle it easily, she quickly followed. Oh. Poplar Fruit nodded. It turned out that they were in the same situation. He smiled and said, what a coincidence. My girlfriend is also from the School of Mathematics. However, she's an undergraduate, so please take care of her in the future. The girl didn't seem to be very good at socializing. She smiled nervously and said embarrassedly, oh, okay, no problem. Do you want to register first or go to the dorm first? Poplar Fruit asked. Let's go to the dorm first. I checked the map. There's a right angle to register, and it's about 450 meters long. The girl finally saw Poplar Fruit's appearance, and her face turned red. So, this warm-hearted, big boy, is so handsome. Unfortunately, he has a girlfriend. Even if he doesn't have a girlfriend, with my appearance, I don't think there's any hope, right? Poplar Fruit didn't pay attention to the girl's roller coaster of emotions. He was a little speechless because of what the girl just said. Why are all the people in my academy like this? Even their words are filled with mathematical philosophy. Is a straight line the shortest between 2 points? Poplar Fruit was glad that Fang Beibei's professional illness wasn't that serious. Poplar Fruit shook his head and carried his bag and box in the other direction without hesitation. I'll go register first. It's just a few hundred meters. I'll go register first before there are too many people there. The girl didn't have any opinions, so she had to follow him. Before Poplar Fruit reached the School of Mathematics, he heard Lin Xingshan's voice. Brother-in-law, brother-in-law. When he turned around, he saw her standing there, wearing a volunteer uniform and carrying a sign. In fact, Poplar Fruit had met Lin Xingshan yesterday. Lin Xingshan came back early to welcome the new students. As the new son-in-law of Fang Beibei's dormitory, Poplar Fruit had to treat her to a meal. Lin Xingshan could be said to be the witness of Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei's relationship. From the second meeting between Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei to the first failure of Poplar Fruit's confession, Lin Xingshan was always by his side. Even Poplar Fruit, the guy with low EQ, only chased after her. During the meal yesterday, Lin Xingshan was overjoyed. She liked Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei from the bottom of her heart. In her words, this is right. You two are a match made in heaven. Just now, when she saw Poplar Fruit carrying another girl's luggage, Lin Xingshan was unhappy. She called out and ran over, giving the girl a look of protest. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, Shanshan, so you're in charge of this? This is a senior from your college. I bumped into her on the road and happened to meet you. Can you help lead the way to report? So we bumped into each other on the road. Brother Yang is really good. I knew it, how could Brother Yang like such an ordinary girl? Lin Xingshan looked at her and muttered in her heart. The girl looked at Lin Xingshan and then looked at Poplar Fruit. She was a little speechless and laughed. Was she inexplicably envied by others? She said softly, hello, sorry to trouble you. Lin Xingshan was not a girl who pestered endlessly. She paused, then turned her head and asked Poplar Fruit, Brother Yang, have you reported? Not yet, I'll send her over and report. Poplar Fruit smiled indifferently. Are you also a freshman? The girl asked in surprise. Yes, I'm also a first-year postgraduate, but I'm from the outer court. Poplar Fruit smiled. Brother Yang, why don't you report first? If you're late, there will be more people and you'll have to wait in a long line. As for the senior, I'll get the boys from our college to help, so you don't have to worry. Lin Xingshan looked at the girl and said to Poplar Fruit. She was not just saying it, she also waved her hand and called over 2 boys. Although they were not strong, boys were still stronger than girls. Poplar Fruit looked at the girl hesitantly. He felt that he should help her to the end. How could the girl not hear the caution in Lin Xingshan's voice? She smiled and said generously, it's okay, you go report first. I have people here to help. Thank you so much for today. Ha, it's nothing. Poplar Fruit waved his hand and smiled, then you guys go ahead, I'll go report first. Chapter 673. Poplar Fruit felt good doing a good deed without leaving his name, even though the girl didn't ask for his name. After bidding farewell to Lin Xingshan, who was at a loss for words, Yang Guo walked towards the academy's headquarters not far away. Unlike Lin Xingshan, who could summon a few guys with a wave of her hand, Poplar Fruit's foreign language school was basically a women's world. Before he even got close, he saw a group of girls. Although they were wearing volunteer vests, many girls were at the age where they liked to look beautiful. They liked to wear shorts in the summer, and the rows of white thighs were particularly dazzling. The sun shone on the ground, and the heat evaporated the mixture of sweat and cosmetics. The thick smell of rouge flooded the outer court's base camp like the sea. Poplar Fruit felt lucky for the first time. Fortunately, the baby didn't use cosmetics. This smell is really bad. Fang Beibei was a beauty without makeup. She liked simple hair accessories and clothes. She hated cosmetics polluting her smooth and delicate skin. In fact, Duan Xueqing was also barefaced. She basically didn't wear any makeup, except for the graduation photo when she was forced by her roommates to do it once. Not only did she not wear any makeup, but her clothes were also relatively simple. Although she was also the fashionable type, very few people could see it. Zheng Yujie, on the other hand, had to wear makeup when she went out. It wasn't very thick, but a light foundation and eyeliner would make people look more energetic and beautiful. Why didn't Poplar Fruit feel disgusted? That was because Zheng Yujie's cosmetics were very high-end, and it wasn't thick. Basically, there wouldn't be any strange smell. Because there were too many girls around, Poplar Fruit saw a little green in the crowd. He smiled slightly, walked over, and patted him on the shoulder. He smiled and said, Hey, Wang Yuba, why are you here? It was the active boy in the French class that Poplar Fruit replaced. He turned his head and said in surprise, Oh, Mr. Yang. Oh, right, you're also a new graduate student this year. I forgot. I should contact you when I go back to school. After Wang Yuba's explanation, only then did Poplar Fruit realize that this guy was the vice president of the Academy's student council. Although his studies were average, he was still doing well in the club activities. The way out of university could be roughly divided into 2 directions. One was to study, and the other was to participate in club activities. Of course, this was not absolute. There were also many students who did well in club activities, and their academic performance was also very good. Club activities were mainly to train people's overall qualities. When they looked for jobs after graduation, they would have a wider range of choices than professional students. The meeting between Poplar Fruit and Wang Yuba attracted the attention of many girls present. Of course, Wang Yuba, who was originally just a little handsome, was immediately inferior to Poplar Fruit. Therefore, most of the girls were secretly looking at Poplar Fruit. Where did this handsome guy come from? It's so tall. Look at his legs, they're too long. They're as tall as Boss Wang's chest. Poplar Fruit also caused a small commotion and whispered discussion. The scene was a bit noisy, so Wang Yuba did not hear it. However, Poplar Fruit heard it. He chuckled and did not tell Wang Yuba that he became somewhat miserable because of himself. Teacher Yang, Brother Yang, what should I call you? Wang Yuba asked with a laugh. His communication skills were good. With just a few words, even Poplar Fruit, who had experience in the society, felt very comfortable. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "You can call me whatever you like. If it's simpler, just call me brother. I don't care about this." Hee, then I'll call you brother. Wang Yuba somewhat wretchedly smiled and said, "Brother, at the end of last semester, didn't you say that at the beginning of this semester, there would be a small test? If the results are good, I can go with you to Bali." The more Wang Yuba said, the lower his voice was, as if he was afraid that others would hear him. He smiled and said, "Brother, I've been studying very hard this holiday, but my foundation is a bit weak, so I can't keep up. You see, can't you give me some pointers?" Poplar Fruit snappily smiled and said, "You think I don't know what's going on in your head? There's no way. We have to test the real level of the exam. If you know the questions in advance, wouldn't that be unfair to other students?" Wang Yuba was not angry. He just wanted to try his relationship. He smiled and said, "Brother, how can I be that kind of person? I'm not looking for you to leak the questions. Well, I just want you to highlight the key points." However, seeing Poplar Fruit stare at him, Wang Yuba raised his hand and said with a smile, "I'm wrong. I can't say that. I understand. You little brat, don't try to get close to me." Poplar Fruit was so angry that he laughed and scolded, "You just have to take the exam. How many points you get depends on whether your results improve or not. It doesn't matter if you don't get first place. As long as your results improve a lot, it means that you worked hard this holiday. Then I'll bring you a gift when I come back from Bali." "Really? That's great. I'll definitely get this gift." Wang Yuba confidently waved his fist and said. Poplar Fruit said, "Don't be overconfident. Whether you get the gift or not, we'll know after the exam. Well, I won't talk to you anymore. Where's the registration place?" Poplar Fruit patted his shoulder and asked. "Senior, I'll bring you there." Wang Yuba volunteered. With Wang Yuba leading the team, Poplar Fruit's registration was much smoother. The undergraduate and graduate students all reported on the same platform. However, it was obvious that there were fewer graduate students. The one in charge was Poplar Fruit's cohort of counselors and teachers. Returning to school after 2 years, many of the counselors and teachers had changed. This cohort of counselors and teachers, Poplar Fruit did not know them. However, even if he did not know them, they knew him. Poplar Fruit, the dean's disciple. "Why is it you, little Wang, who brought him here?" Teacher Zhang Mani asked with a smile. She even stood up and extended her hand to Poplar Fruit. Sure enough, his teacher's influence was great. Poplar Fruit muttered in his heart. However, he did not dare to neglect and quickly shook the teacher's hand politely. He smiled and said, "Hello, Teacher Zhang. You flatter me. I happen to know Yuba here, so I'll have to trouble him. Teacher Zhang, senior brother, even taught our class last year." Wang Yuba's mouth was nimble as he spoke. "Then you have to learn well. Our dean has not taught a graduate student for many years. Poplar Fruit is a student that he made an exception to guide personally. It is your fortune to be able to learn from him." Zhang Mani's words were always flattering Poplar Fruit and the person behind Poplar Fruit, Chen Zongdai. Poplar Fruit hurriedly said some humble words. Otherwise, it would seem that he was too arrogant. However, the freshmen behind Poplar Fruit, as well as the freshmen beside him, were all paying attention to him. They had all heard what Teacher Zhang had just said. There was actually such a powerful person who could get the dean to guide him personally. This was something that they had never thought of before. Poplar Fruit wanted to keep a low profile, but it seemed like it was impossible to do so. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.